welcome back. We are glad to have you here with us again. Tonight, we return to one of the strangest names in American secrecy, Area 51. It sits out in the Nevada desert, wrapped in fences, warning signs, silent roads, watched ridgelines, and airspace most people will never be allowed to enter. To some, it is only a high-security military test site, a place where secret aircraft were born years before the public ever saw them. To others, it is something far deeper. A vault, a hidden archive, a desert door behind which something not of this earth may have been studied, stored, or kept from the world. We are not beginning with proof. We are beginning with the question. What do you believe is hidden inside Area 51? Is it only human technology, protected by the needs of war and national security? Or has Groom Lake held a secret so large that silence became the only safe answer? Hold your own view as we move through the story. You may believe, you may doubt, you may simply listen. Now, let us step slowly inside America's most famous secret. Area 51 is one of those names that seems to arrive already carrying a shadow. You hear it once and the mind begins to fill in the rest. A road stretching through empty Nevada land. A gate with warning signs. A camera fixed to a pole. A white truck parked far up on a ridge. Somewhere beyond it all, a base that for decades was not meant to exist in public speech, even while its runways kept growing under the sun. But before the stories, before the rumors, before the late-night radio calls, and the whispered claims about recovered craft, there was a place. Groom Lake, Nevada. On a map, it looks almost plain. A pale, dry mark in the desert. Not a living lake, not water, not a place where anything soft gathers or moves. Groom Lake is a dry lake bed, a hard basin of earth and salt pressed flat by time. From edge to edge, the dry lake bed is about 3.5 miles across, wide enough to look empty and simple from far away, but useful in a way few landscapes are. Flat ground in all directions, hard surface, open sky, long sight lines, no city lights close by, no crowds, no accidental visitors. For ordinary life, it is a harsh place. For secret aircraft, it was almost perfect. The desert around Groom Lake does not invite you in. It warns you away slowly, then firmly. Long before a person gets near the true center, the land begins to change. Roads narrow, signs appear, fences cut through the dust. Cameras sit in quiet places. Beyond them, the mountains rise like old walls around the basin, holding the base in a kind of natural bowl. From most directions, you cannot see much, but if you try to come close, you can be seen for miles. That is part of the design. The land hides the base, but it does not hide the trespasser. Above it, the secrecy continues. The air over Groom Lake is not ordinary sky. It is part of restricted airspace known as R4808N, a closed block where civilian aircraft cannot simply wander through with cameras, curiosity, or questions. A small plane cannot just turn toward Groom Lake and pass over the runways. A pilot cannot treat it like empty Nevada air. That space is controlled, watched, denied. Permission matters here. So does silence. This is where the two stories of Area 51 begin to overlap. One story is official enough to stand on solid ground. Groom Lake was used by the CIA for some of the most secret aircraft testing of the Cold War. In the 1950s and 1960s, the U-2 spy plane was tested there. A high-flying aircraft built to look down into places the United States was not supposed to see. Later came the A-12 Oxguard, faster, sharper, more advanced, a machine that belonged to the edge of what the public could imagine at the time. Those aircraft were human. They were designed by human engineers, built under human contracts, and flown for human reasons. But to anyone who glimpsed them before they were known, they could have looked unreal. A strange shape over the desert, a speed that did not match familiar planes, a runway hidden in a place the government would barely name, workers flown in from Las Vegas on unmarked aircraft, men and women who arrived at one world in the morning, crossed into another behind the fence, and returned home without saying what they had seen. That is the proven history. And that proven history is exactly why the rumors grew. Because if a place could hide the U-2, if it could hide the A-12 ox cart, if it could shelter aircraft decades ahead of what ordinary people understood, then a question begins to form almost on its own. What else could be hidden there? What else could be tested over a dry lake bed where no one was allowed to look down from above? What else might need mountains, fences, unmarked flights, restricted airspace, and a culture built around never asking more than your job required? For the military, the answer is simple. Extreme secrecy protects advanced technology. It keeps foreign governments from seeing the shape of tomorrow's aircraft before tomorrow arrives. It protects pilots, engineers, radar systems, stealth materials, and the strange, expensive work of staying ahead in the sky. A secret test site is not strange by itself. It is part of how nations prepare for wars they hope never come. That is the sober answer. But believers hear the same facts differently. To them, the same isolation that protects a spy plane could also protect something far less ordinary. A recovered craft. A machine that does not fit any known design. A shape with no wings. No engine sound. No exhaust. No easy place to begin. If such an object existed, Groom Lake would offer almost everything needed to study it. Flat ground, empty miles, closed air, controlled access. A place where a strange flight could be explained away as another classified test. That is the heart of the Area 51 myth. Not that the base is secret. Everyone knows that now. The deeper pull comes from the idea that the secrecy itself might be large enough to cover almost anything. Over time, the visible base changed. Satellite images from the 2000s and 2010s showed expansion. New hangars, longer runways, more roads, marks cut across the lake bed, infrastructure growing in a place that already seemed to have enough secrets for one lifetime. Each new structure became fuel for another theory. Each wide roof, each long shadow, each line of pavement across the pale basin gave watchers something new to measure and wonder about. Some looked at the hangars and saw aircraft storage. Others saw doors, sealed doors along the desert floor. Doors that might open only at night. Doors that might lead to aircraft bays, test chambers, or to levels hidden deeper in the hills. There have long been rumors of entrances cut into slopes, of spaces under the sand, of areas that do not appear clearly from above, because the true work is not on the surface at all. None of that has been proven in the alien sense, but the idea has stayed because Groom Lake already feels like a place where the surface is only the first layer. The people who work there add another layer to the mystery. Many are said to be flown in daily from Las Vegas on unmarked aircraft crossing the desert by air instead of by public road. They do not all know the same things. That is how compartmentalization works. One person may work on a coding, another on a sensor, another on maintenance, power, food, security, fuel, or transport. Each person sees a room, a route, a task. Very few see the whole picture, one piece of the puzzle. In ordinary classified work, that makes sense. It protects secrets by making them small. But in the Area 51 legend, it creates something else. It creates the possibility that even people inside the base may not know what the base truly holds. A worker could spend years there and still never see the most restricted hangar. A pilot could fly one program and never learn what sits behind another door. A guard could know a fence line, a post, a badge color, and nothing beyond it. That kind of secrecy does not kill rumor. It feeds it. The desert itself helps. Groom Lake has a way of becoming more than a location. It becomes a screen for whatever people fear, hope, or suspect about hidden power. In daylight, it is pale and dry, almost empty. At night, the same emptiness changes. The mountains darken. The lake bed fades into a flat, ghostly shape. Lights appear where no town should be. A faint glow moves near the horizon. A sound carries, then vanishes. The mind begins to ask whether it saw a plane, a test, a trick of distance, or something else entirely. And around Area 51, that question has lasted for decades. The government's secrecy is real. The spy plane history is real. The restricted airspace is real. The fences, the patrols, the unmarked commuter flights. The expansion seen from above, the long runways, the hangars, the watched approaches, all of that belongs to the known world. But the legend begins where the known world stops. It begins at the edge of a gate. It begins with a dry lake bed that can serve as a runway in almost any direction. It begins with mountains that hide what is inside, while exposing anyone who tries to look too closely. It begins with aircraft, once so secret they seemed almost impossible. It begins with the simple fact that Groom Lake has already kept major truths from the public for years. So when people ask whether something not human could have been hidden there too, they are not asking from nowhere. They are asking because Area 51 trained the public to believe that the desert can keep secrets. And then, in the late 1980s, one man stepped into that silence with a story that changed everything. He did not claim only that Groom Lake held secret aircraft. He claimed there was another place nearby, a place called S4, where the machines were not just advanced, they were not ours. By the late 1980s, Area 51 already had a strange place. In American rumor, people knew there was a base somewhere beyond the open roads of Nevada. They knew aircraft were tested there. They knew the land was watched, the air was closed, and the government was not eager to answer questions. But for most of the public, the story still lived at the edge of a larger Cold War mystery. Secret planes, hidden runways, strange lights that might one day be explained by human design. Then Bob Lazar appeared. In November 1989, Lazar made a claim that would change the meaning of Area 51 almost overnight. He said he had worked near the base on technology that was not simply classified, not merely ahead of its time, and not just another secret aircraft program. According to Lazar, he had been brought into a hidden project built around flying craft of unknown origin. Not experimental jets, not spy planes, something else. His story didn't place the center of the mystery at Groom Lake itself. That is one reason it spread so strongly. Lazar claimed the deeper work happened south of Groom Lake, near Papoose Lake, at a facility he called S4. In his telling, S4 was not a normal office, hangar row, or airfield. It was a highly restricted site built into the side of a mountain, with camouflage doors angled into the slope, so they would be difficult to see from above. The image was simple and powerful. A desert hillside, doors cut into rock, a facility hidden not just behind fences, but inside the land. Lazar said the route into this world was tightly controlled. Personnel were flown into Groom Lake, then moved to buses with blacked-out windows. From there, they were taken to S4, unable to see the road clearly, unable to map the route in any normal way. Whether that detail was meant for security, disorientation, or both, it gave the story a sense of procedure. It did not sound like a campfire rumor. It sounded like a system. That was part of its force. Lazar did not speak only in vague terms. He gave numbers, places, shapes, and habits. He claimed S4 housed 9 flying craft of unknown origin, 9 separate machines kept in bays behind those hidden doors. He said one of them was a small, disc-shaped craft he called the Sports Model, a nickname that would become one of the most famous phrases in UFO culture. The Sports Model, as Lazar described it, was not built like a human aircraft. Its outer shell was smooth and seamless, with no bolts, no welds, no rivets, and no clear panels. The shape was rounded and clean, like a machine grown whole, rather than assembled in parts. Inside, he said, the craft felt cramped. The seats were small, the walls curved. The layout did not resemble a normal cockpit. There were no familiar rows of switches, gauges, screens, or controls that a pilot would expect to see. No seams, no bolts, no familiar machine. To believers, those details mattered. A lie can be large, but details make a story feel close. The small seats, the curved walls, the absence of wiring, the hidden bays, the bus ride, the number of craft, the name Papoose Lake. Each part seemed to lock into the next. It gave listeners something to picture, something to test against maps, memories, later interviews, and the strange culture around the base. But the most famous part of Lazar's account was not the shape of the craft. It was what he said powered it. Lazar claimed the propulsion system used element 115. In plain terms, he said the craft did not move like an airplane. It did not push air backward to go forward. It did not rely on wings, jets, propellers, or rockets in the ordinary way. According to him, the reactor system created a gravity-like effect. It distorted space-time around the craft, allowing it to move by changing the relationship between itself and its destination. He described it less like flying and more like making the distance behave differently. For many listeners, that was the line that made the story feel either too strange to dismiss or too strange to believe. The claim reached beyond aviation and into physics. If true, it was not only a hidden aircraft program, it was a hidden science, a way of moving through the world that would make every known engine seem old. And yet, this is also where the questions sharpen. Element 115 did later become real in one limited sense. In 2003, scientists synthesized element 115 in a laboratory. It was later named moscovium. Supporters of Lazar often point to that fact as one of the strange echoes in his story. He spoke about element 115 before it had been officially created, and years later, the element appeared on the periodic table. But the known scientific version does not behave like Lazar's fuel. The isotopes of moscovium produced in laboratories are highly unstable. They decay rapidly. They do not sit quietly in a container as a lasting power source. They do not, as far as public science knows, drive a gravity reactor. Skeptics also point out that the periodic table already suggested heavier elements could exist. Naming element 115 was not the same as proving he had touched a stable version of it, or worked beside an alien machine powered by it. That gap remains. a real element, an unstable form, a claim of something stable, hidden, and far beyond reach. The debate around Lazar has always lived in that gap. Supporters argue that he knew things an outsider should not have known. They point to his descriptions of security, transport, hidden facilities, and test flights. They note that the base itself was still wrapped in denial and uncertainty when he spoke. To them, the way his story fit the desert was too specific to be brushed aside. It had the smell of a real place, the feel of real procedure. Skeptics answer with a harder problem. Lazar's claimed education and employment records are missing or disputed. Schools he said he attended did not clearly confirm him in the way one would expect. Work history connected to sensitive programs has been argued over for decades. No confirmed photograph, document, physical sample, badge, piece of element 115, or official record has ever publicly proven the heart of his account. For skeptics, that matters. A story this large should leave something behind. Still, Lazar's claim did not depend only on what he said he saw inside S4. He also claimed to know when test flights would happen. According to his account, he took friends into the desert outside the restricted zone to watch strange lights over the area. The lights, he said, were not random. They were part of scheduled tests. This part of the story gave it a strange outer witness layer. It was no longer only one man saying he had been inside a hidden room. It became one man saying he could predict when something from that hidden room would move in the night sky. For people already watching Area 51 from a distance, that was powerful. The desert became a stage, the ridgelines, the empty roads, the black shape of the mountains at night, the silent lights over restricted land, had all seemed to line up with the claim that something was being tested behind the fence, something that could rise, drift, stop, and move in ways no public aircraft could match. But again, the same desert gives two readings. A believer sees confirmation. A skeptic sees classified human tests, distance, darkness, memory, and expectation. Once a person has been told to watch a certain place at a certain time, a light can become more than a light. It can gather meaning. It can be pulled into the shape of the story waiting for it. That is why Lazar remains so difficult to place. He is either one of the most important whistleblowers in modern American history, or one of the most influential myth makers the UFO world has ever known. There is very little middle ground in the way people speak about him. His supporters hear a man punished for telling the truth. His critics hear an unproven story built from gaps, missing records, and claims that cannot be tested. Yet whether he told the truth or not, the effect is beyond dispute. After Bob Lazar, Area 51 was no longer just a secret aircraft base in the public mind. It became the place where alien technology might be held. It became the place of hidden bays and buried doors, of 9 craft behind a mountain face, of a sports model with no seams, of a fuel the world could name but not use. The base changed from a symbol of secrecy into a symbol of withheld reality. That may be Lazar's true legacy, not proof, a doorway. He gave the old rumors a map, a cast, a method, and a machine. He moved the story from something is hidden out there to this is where it is hidden. This is what it looks like. This is how they move it. And this is how it flies. From that point on, every hangar at Area 51 seemed to carry a deeper possibility. Every sealed door could be more than a door. Every shape under cover could be more than a prototype. Every light above the desert could be read through the same haunting question. If Lazar was telling the truth, then the greatest secret at Area 51 was not the base itself. It was what had been brought there. Imagine the quiet just inside a hangar after the door has closed. The desert wind is gone. The sun is gone. The open sky is gone. Only the cold floor remains, stretching away under overhead lights. And somewhere ahead, shapes sit beneath covers in the dimness. They are wide in the wrong places, low where they should be tall, smooth where a machine should show edges, joints, panels, seams. Nothing moves, but the room feels alive with what has been kept from view. This is one of the oldest and strongest claims tied to Area 51. Not only that strange aircraft are tested there, and not only that unusual lights rise above the desert at night, but that the most restricted hangars may hold physical craft that were not built on Earth. Real objects, stored objects, machines with weight, surface, shape, and shadow. The stories do not all agree. They rarely do. But across the Area 51 legend, certain forms return again and again. Discs, smooth cylinders, sharp-edged triangles, diamond-shaped objects. Some are described as small enough to fit inside a single bay. Others are said to be too large for ordinary aircraft storage and must be kept in deeper chambers, wider vaults, or spaces hidden behind the land itself. Some accounts place them in surface hangars near the runways at Groom Lake. Others move them into underground rooms, concealed mountain entrances, or protected bays built behind doors that look like part of the desert slope. The claim is not just that something once landed there. The claim is that something stayed. For believers, this is where Area 51 becomes more than a place of testing. It becomes a warehouse for the impossible, a site where recovered machines are stored, studied, taken apart, put back together, and compared with human designs. A place where engineers might stand in silence around a craft and look for the first point of entry, only to find no door they understand, no intake, no exhaust, no rivets, no engine housing, no clear sign of how the thing was made. That detail matters in these stories. The objects are often described not as complex in a familiar way, but as strangely simple. Smooth surfaces, silent materials, curves without joints, hulls that do not seem assembled from parts. A human aircraft tells you something about its maker the moment you look at it. It shows panels, access points, fasteners, wires, control surfaces, heat shielding, fuel systems, and the marks left by design choices. But the alleged craft in Area 51 stories often seem to hide the very idea of construction. Nothing recognizable. The rumored storage system around these objects is just as important as the objects themselves. Accounts speak of layered access controls, one checkpoint before another. Armed escorts, badge zones, retinal scans, doors that open only for certain people at certain times, workers who are told where to stand, what to touch, what not to ask, and which line on the floor must never be crossed. Again, some of this is not strange in a classified facility. A secret aircraft program would use tight access, so would a radar project, a stealth coding lab, a drone test hangar, or a foreign technology evaluation site. The military does not need alien wreckage to justify guards, barriers, and locked doors. But inside the legend, the security takes on another meaning. It becomes the shape of the secret. If no one person is allowed to see the whole object, then no one person can explain it. If a contractor sees only one tarped curve, a guard sees only one dark bay, and an engineer studies only one part, then the truth can be broken into pieces. A wing here, a surface there, a power unit behind another wall. Even if the object exists, it becomes hard to prove because each witness carries only a fragment. That is the strange strength of the Area 51 story. It survives by being incomplete. The known history of the base gives the skeptical view a solid place to stand. Area 51 is definitely hidden advanced human aircraft. The U-2 was once a secret. The A-12 Oxcart was once a secret. The F-117 Nighthawk, with its sharp black shape and strange radar-evading design, belonged for years to a hidden world before the public understood what it was seeing. Those machines were extraordinary, but they were human. And if someone had glimpsed them before they were known, especially at night, from far away, through heat shimmer or desert haze, they might have seemed beyond human design. A stealth aircraft can look wrong before the eye learns what it is. A drone can move in a way that surprises a person used to ordinary planes. Radar test beds, aerodynamic models, and strange prototype frames can all create shapes that do not match normal expectations. That is the skeptic's answer. Strange does not mean alien. A covered disc could be a radar target. A smooth body could be a drone. A sharp triangle could be a classified stealth platform. A diamond shape could be a test article, a lifting body, or something built only to see how radar responds to unusual angles. At a place like Area 51, odd shapes are not only possible, they are expected, but believers point to the details that do not fit so easily. They point to the accounts where the object has no engine, no cockpit, no wiring, no panel lines, no heat marks, no landing gear, no signs of ordinary repair or construction. They point to descriptions of interiors that seem too small for human pilots, or surfaces too smooth for known fabrication. They ask why something merely experimental would need such layers of myth around it, unless the myth was hiding something even more sensitive than advanced aircraft. The answer, of course, depends on what a person is willing to believe secrecy can hold. One alleged account from the late 1990s describes a former contractor who said he saw a silver disc about 30 feet across inside a bay where he was not supposed to be. The object, as the story goes, rested on short supports above the floor. It had no visible seams, no rivets, no engine ports, and no recognizable wiring around it. It was not polished like a showpiece. It was dull, smooth, quiet, and wrong, in a way the witness struggled to describe. What makes that kind of account powerful is not drama, it is restraint. No aliens walked out. No alarm sounded. No great reveal follows. The witness simply claimed to have seen an object that did not belong to the aircraft world he knew, and then left with the memory of its shape. A wide, silver form, 30 feet across, resting in a controlled space, as if it were a machine, but not one that explained itself. There's another kind of story, quieter still. A civilian truck driver making a specialty materials delivery connected to the base, later claimed to have glimpsed tarped objects with unusual contours. Not full craft, not open evidence, only shapes under cover. Curves that seemed too clean, too symmetrical, too uniform for ordinary aircraft parts. The kind of sight that lasts because it is not enough to prove anything, but too strange to forget. A tarp can hide a prototype. It can also create one in the mind. That is the problem with almost every outside glimpse connected to Area 51. The witness sees something partial, a shape, a shadow, a covered object, a bay door closing, a smooth surface, perturbed before an escort tells them to move. It is always too little for proof and too much for peace. Then there are the deeper storage rumors. These stories move the craft away from the surface entirely. They speak of underground vaults beneath the desert floor, tunnels wide enough for vehicles, elevators carrying equipment downward, and access routes that allow sensitive objects to move without ever being exposed to open air. Some versions place these spaces below the main base. Others connect them to mountain entrances, hidden bays, or distant support facilities, where the most sensitive materials can be kept away from satellites. Again, none of this proves an alien program. Underground military spaces are not impossible. Sensitive work often moves beneath roofs, behind berms, inside hardened rooms, or under layers of earth. If a nation has something valuable enough, it protects it. If a program is dangerous enough, it isolates it. If a test object must not be seen from above, it is kept out of sight. But in the Area 51 legend, underground storage gives the mystery a second life. It means the most important thing may not be visible at all. A person can stare at satellite images for hours, tracing roads, runways, hangars, and new buildings, and still miss the point if the real secret sits below the surface. A ridge may not just be a ridge. A road ending near a slope may not truly end. A building may not be the facility, but only the door to it. That is how the story deepens. The more people look at the surface, the more believers ask what the surface was designed to hide. There are claims of concealed bays built into mountainsides, their doors colored and shaped to blend with the surrounding rock. From ground level, they would look like stone. From above, they might look like shadow. Only from the right distance, at the right angle, at the right moment, would the outline appear. This may sound like legend, but Area 51 has always lived close to that line. It is a real base, wrapped in unreal stories. A real dry lake bed, surrounded by claims of machines that bend every rule. A real history of hidden aircraft that makes less proven stories feel possible, at least to those who already suspect the government has kept more than it has told. And there is one more reason the hidden craft claim keeps returning. If alien technology were ever recovered, a place like Area 51 would not need to display it. It would need to separate it, to lock it down, to study it piece by piece. The whole in one place, the control system in another, the power source somewhere else, a material sample sent to one group, a structural piece sent to another. Engineers might be asked to solve problems without knowing the source of the puzzle. A contractor might test heat resistance and never know what the material once belonged to. That kind of system protects the secret from enemies. It also protects the secret from itself, because if the truth is divided into enough rooms, then almost no one can carry it out whole. This is where the alien craft theory becomes hard to kill and hard to confirm. Each alleged witness only sees a little. Each skeptical explanation covers some of the ground. Each true classified program proves that the base can hide remarkable machines. Each rumored object pushes the story past the edge of what can be checked, and through it all, the hangars remain closed, still, silent along the dry lake bed. Maybe inside them are only the next generation of human aircraft, quiet drones, stealth systems, shapes designed to fool radar, not physics. Maybe the strangest machines at Groom Lake were always ours, built by people under contract, flown by people under orders, and hidden because that is what nations do when they are afraid of being surpassed. Or maybe the old stories hold a darker possibility, that some of the shapes were not designed in any office, that some of the surfaces were not poured, cut, welded, or bolted by human hands, that somewhere behind a sealed door, under white light and heavy guard, A machine sits waiting for the world to catch up to it. There is no public proof of that, but the image remains. A long hangar, a covered form, a smooth silver curve under cloth, a worker told not to look too long, a door closing before the desert sees what is inside. The public edge of Area 51 has its own kind of silence. It is not the silence of an empty place. It is the silence of a place that feels aware of you. The road runs through open desert. The scrub sits low against the ground. The mountains seem far away until you notice how carefully they frame the land ahead. There are no crowds, no welcome signs, no friendly lights telling you that you have reached a destination. There are warnings instead, and beyond the warnings, someone is usually watching. For decades, people have come to the desert around Groom Lake because they believed that if the base truly held something strange, the truth might one day slip outside, not through a document, not through an official announcement, just through a brief movement in the sky. A light rising too fast, a shape crossing the wrong part of the horizon, a silent object appearing where no ordinary aircraft should be. And ranchers saw things first, or at least they were among the first to speak in the older local stories. People who lived with the desert, who knew the normal rhythm of wind, weather, aircraft, and distant military activity, began to describe lights that did not feel right to them. Low lights, moving over scrubland, slow glows that drifted toward the restricted land, points of light that rose straight up, stopped, and then vanished without the dull engine sound that should have followed. A person passing through might misread the desert at night. A person who lived there knew when something was wrong. That is why the outside witness stories matter. They do not come only from tourists hoping to see a flying saucer. They come from many kinds of people: ranchers, hikers, road travelers, photographers, former military personnel, pilots, men and women who spent time near the boundary and came away with a small account that never fully left them. They were not inside the base, but they were close enough to feel its pressure. Around the perimeter, the security presence became part of the legend. Watchers gave the local security teams a nickname: the Camo Dudes. They were often seen in unmarked white or tan pickup trucks, parked high on ridgelines, watching the public land below through binoculars. They did not need to shout to be understood. Their position did most of the work. A truck on a hill, a windshield and catching light, a person inside who knew exactly where you were. The message was clear, not spoken, clear. For people who came near the boundary, the Camo Dudes turned the desert into a kind of slow theater. A watcher, watching the base, might suddenly realize he was being watched too. A photographer pointing a lens toward a ridge might see another lens pointed back. Even legal public land could begin to feel borrowed, temporary, and fragile. That feeling shaped the witness accounts. The strange lights were one thing. The sense of being observed while observing was another. One alleged account from the late 1980s comes from a former mining prospector who knew remote ground and dark horizons better than most. According to the story, he was near the southern edge of Groom Lake when he saw a dark, flat, oval shape moving low across the area. It carried a faint bluish glow, not bright enough to flood the land, but steady enough to mark the outline. It did not roar overhead. It did not flash like a normal aircraft. It glided. Then helicopter rotors swept through the area. That detail changes the feeling of the story. The object alone could be argued over. A mistaken shape, a test aircraft, a trick of distance, but the sudden arrival of helicopters makes the witness wonder, whether someone else had seen it too, or whether someone was already following its movement. The old prospector did not claim to know what it was. That is important. He claimed only that it moved in a way he could not place, and that the response around it felt immediate. Many Area 51 stories live in that small space. A thing is seen, then security appears. In the early 1990s, another account described a group watching from an observation ridge. They had gone there for the same reason so many did, to catch a glimpse of what the base might test after dark. For a long time, there was nothing. Desert air, black mountains, a few steady lights that might have been ordinary activity. Then one light rose from the direction of the base. It pulsed twice, then it shot upward. The witnesses later described the movement not as a climb, but as something closer to a sudden departure. No slow arc, no normal banking turn, just a rise, 2 pulses, and a leap into the dark. Soon after, 2 military trucks appeared below them. The trucks did not drive up and make a direct confrontation, at least in the common telling. They simply arrived where they could be seen. Again, the message did not need words. What had been a sky-watching trip became something else. The witnesses were reminded that even from outside the fence, there were limits. The sky could be watched only from far away. The land could be crossed only until the signs said stop, and if something unusual happened, the people guarding the area could close the distance faster than the watchers expected. Freedom Ridge and Whitesides, often written as Whitesides, became important names in that culture of watching. For a time, they offered some of the best public views toward the base. From those high points, dedicated observers could set up cameras, telescopes, and long lenses, looking across the desert toward the forbidden heart of the range. They were not inside the boundary. They were not crossing the line. They were using the land that still belonged, at least legally, to the public. Then, in the mid-1990s, those areas were closed and absorbed into the restricted zone. For believers, that closure meant something. It felt like the best windows had been boarded up. If there was nothing too sensitive to see, they asked, why take away the places where people could see it? The official reasoning could be national security, safety, and protection of classified programs. Those answers make sense near a secret test site, but emotionally, the effect was different. The public had been pushed farther back. The mystery had gained more distance. Tikaboo Peak became the remaining legal high point, a place still used by determined observers because it offers a distant view toward the base. It is not easy. It is far away. The trip is rough. The view is limited, and the base remains tiny against the scale of the land. But that is part of the ritual now. To watch Area 51 legally, you must accept distance. You must accept heat, cold, dust, difficult roads, and the fact that the thing you came to see may never show itself. Still, people go. They go because even a few seconds can feel worth the effort. One Las Vegas man, in an account from the early 2000s, claimed he photographed a metallic diamond-shaped object over the main runway. According to the story, the shape hovered long enough for him to raise his camera and take pictures. Then security vehicles appeared. His film, he said, was taken. Like many such accounts, it ends at the point where proof should begin. The image is said to exist, then disappears. The witness keeps the memory. The public gets only the story. That pattern is frustrating. It is also part of why the legend lasts. If the film had been public and clear, the debate would change. If it showed nothing, the story would fade. But a taken film becomes another sealed door. It cannot prove the claim, but it can deepen the feeling that something was prevented from being seen. For skeptics, that is too convenient. For believers, it fits the pattern too well. The skeptical view deserves its place here. The desert around Area 51 is not an ordinary sky. It is a place where classified aircraft, drones, radar systems, and experimental platforms may be tested. At long distance, under low light, a human aircraft can appear stranger than it is. Heat shimmer can bend shape. Haze can soften edges. A moving light can seem to stop if it is traveling toward the observer. A flare can hang in the sky. A drone can move without the sound someone expects from a plane. Near a secret range, unusual sightings should be expected, but the witnesses push back with what they saw. Some were not casual tourists. Some had lived near aircraft for years. Some had military backgrounds. Some were pilots. Some were photographers who knew lenses, distances, and ordinary optical tricks. Their claim is not simply that they saw lights. It is that they saw behavior that did not fit. Hovering, but without sound. Vertical climbs, hard changes in direction. Objects that vanished too suddenly. Shapes that seemed too smooth, too steady, too controlled. A strange light can be mistaken. A pattern is harder to set aside. One of the better-known road accounts comes from 1995, along Nevada State Route 375, the road often called the Extraterrestrial Highway. The name itself has become part of the myth, but the land is still lonely. Long stretches of dark pavement, wide sky, mountains pressed against the horizon. A driver moving through that space at night can feel very small. In the account, the driver saw 3 glowing orbs over the southern mountains. They were not scattered randomly. They moved together, holding a formation for a short time. Then 2 vanished, as if switched off. The third remained for a moment, longer before shooting upward and disappearing. No chase, no explosion, no sound, just 3 lights over dark mountains, then one last motion into the sky. To a skeptic, the story may be explainable. Flares, aircraft, reflections, distance, and memory can combine in strange ways on empty roads at night. But to the witness, the experience was not a puzzle on paper. It was an event that happened in front of him. The difference matters. People do not remember these moments as theories. They remember them as something their body stood beneath: the road, the dark, the sudden absence. After the light was gone. Over time, these outside accounts became the living edge of the Area 51 mystery. The base itself remained sealed. The hangars could not be entered. The restricted sky could not be crossed. The documents were sparse, redacted, or silent, so the story moved to the places where ordinary people could still stand. Roads, ridges, ranch land, distant peaks, the borderlands of secrecy. There is something almost old-fashioned about it. People watching a forbidden place from afar, hoping the truth appears in the open for just long enough to be seen. Most nights, nothing happens. Then one night, someone sees a light rise from behind the mountains and move in a way they cannot forget. That is all it takes. A few seconds can tie the outside world back to the hidden rooms inside. A single glow over the perimeter can make a person think again about covered craft, sealed bays, and stories from men who claim the machines were not human. The witness outside the fence does not know what is behind the door, but for one brief moment, it may feel as if the door is opened in the sky. And this is the strange rhythm of Area 51. The deeper truth, if there is one, stays behind layers of land and law, but its rumored traces appear at the edge: a truck on a ridge, a light over the hills, a photographer stopped before he can leave, A road sign warning that the boundary is near. A peak where people still bring cameras and wait through the cold dark. The mystery does not need to show itself fully. It only needs to move once. For the people who have stood outside the fence, the question is not abstract. It is tied to a place, a night, a color, a motion, a feeling of being watched. They did not enter Area 51. They did not open a hangar. They did not bring back a machine, a sample, or a document. They brought back something weaker than proof, but stronger than nothing. They brought back testimony, and testimony, when it repeats across years, begins to take on weight of its own. If something truly unusual were brought to Area 51, the next question would be practical before it became strange. Where would it go? A craft could not simply sit in the open. A material sample could not be left on a desk. A power system no one understood would not be placed in a normal workshop, surrounded by ordinary tools and casual visitors. Anything dangerous, valuable, or beyond public science would need control. It would need isolation. It would need rooms built not for display, but for patience. That is how the underground side of the Area 51 legend begins, not with a bright object in the sky, but with the idea of storage. A hidden base above ground is already hard to enter. A hidden base below ground becomes something else entirely. It becomes a world without windows, a place where the desert surface gives nothing away. A person could stand under the Nevada sun, looking at a plain building, a ridge, a door, or an empty patch of earth, and have no idea what might sit below it. The idea may sound like fiction, but underground military spaces are not fiction by themselves. During the Cold War, many sensitive sites used hardened subterranean rooms, command centers, bunkers, storage areas, and protected facilities. Nations built downward because the surface could be watched, bombed, photographed, or crossed. The earth itself became a shield. So the basic concept is not impossible. The question is what such spaces would be used for. In ordinary terms, an underground facility near a classified test range could hold aircraft parts, sensors, fuel systems, stealth materials, communications equipment, radar tools, or records too sensitive for normal storage. It could protect workers from dangerous tests. It could keep foreign satellites from seeing a project before the public name exists. It could allow experiments to continue without the open desert revealing their shape. That is the grounded answer. But Area 51 has never remained only grounded. In the larger legend, the hidden spaces beneath the desert become vaults for technology not built on Earth. They become laboratories where small teams study pieces of craft, too strange to understand at a glance. They become tunnels, wide enough for vehicles, elevators, guarded by armed personnel, shielded rooms where a person enters only after badges, scans, and orders. They become the place where the surface story ends and the deeper story begins, one layer above, another layer below. The theory often begins with access. In these accounts, the most sensitive areas are not reached through dramatic doors carved into the desert like something from a movie. They are reached through ordinary-looking structures, controlled corridors, and guarded elevators. A worker may walk through a building that looks plain from the outside, pass through checkpoints, surrender personal items, wait for an escort, and then descend. Downward movement matters in these stories. It gives the mystery a direction. Above ground, there are runways, hangars, roads, and desert light. Below ground, there are said to be clean rooms, testing bays, storage vaults, sealed laboratories, and corridors where only certain badge colors are allowed. Every level means fewer people. Every door means less language. The deeper a person goes, the smaller the circle becomes. This is where the compartmentalization becomes central. The idea is simple. No one sees more than they need to see. One team studies a metal, another studies a control surface, another tests heat response, another looks at electrical effects. A machinist may be asked to cut, bend, or measure a strange material without being told what larger object it came from. A physicist may study a reaction and never see the craft. A guard may protect a room and never know what is inside. One piece, never the whole. In a normal military program, this protects classified work. In the alien technology theory, it does something even stronger. It means the truth can be real without being widely known, even among the people helping to study it. The secret survives because it has been broken into pieces too small for any single person to carry out. That idea connects directly back to Bob Lazar's S4 claims. Lazar said the deeper work was not at the main Groom Lake base, but at S4, near Papoose Lake, south of Area 51. He described craft stored in mountainside bays, not standing openly on a runway. Whether one accepts his story or not, it changed how many people imagined hidden technology. It moved the center of the mystery into slopes, sealed doors, and controlled rooms away from ordinary sight. After Lazar, the Area 51 legend was no longer only about what could be seen from a ridge. It was about what could not be seen at all. The underground storage theory grew around that absence. People began studying satellite images, roads, shadows, service buildings, and markings. On the desert floor, some looked for roads that seemed to end too suddenly near hillsides. Others pointed to ground patterns that might suggest buried structures or heavy access points. Some claimed there were tunnels linking Area 51 to other secure facilities. Others imagined a separate hidden network where objects could be moved without ever entering open air. Most of these claims are impossible to prove from the outside. That has not stopped them from spreading. A road that disappears behind a ridge may be just a road. A building may be just a building. A shadow may be nothing more than a shadow cast by rock and afternoon sun. But around Area 51, ordinary features are never received in an ordinary way. Every line has a second reading. Every roof can become a cover. Every hill can become a wall hiding a door. The base teaches people to look twice. Some theories focus not on whole craft, but on main components. This version is often more believable to people who doubt the idea of intact flying saucers parked in perfect rows. Maybe, they say. The real secret is smaller. A section of hull, a control interface, a power unit, a material sample, a lens, a core, a piece of something recovered from a crash site and moved into the most secure environment available. Smaller pieces would be easier to hide. They would also be easier to divide. A material that reacts strangely to heat might go to one contractor. A panel that changes opacity under certain conditions might go to another. A compact energy source, if it existed, would be locked away under stronger rules. A curved structural part could be studied for years without anyone being told whether it came from a craft, a weapon, or a foreign test article. Every team could be working on the same mystery without knowing the mystery's name. For believers, this explains why no single insider can give the whole story. For skeptics, it is also what makes the story too easy to protect from disproof. If every witness has only a fragment and every missing fact is explained by secrecy, then the claim becomes hard to test. The absence of evidence becomes part of the design. The locked door proves nothing, but it also leaves the imagination untouched. Still, the stories continue. Some alleged accounts describe rooms where craft parts are suspended in frames, held away from the floor as instruments measure their response to light, pressure, sound, or electromagnetic fields. Others describe observation windows looking into sealed chambers, where objects are tested remotely because no one is sure what they might do. There are claims of shielded rooms, where ordinary radios fail, where compasses misbehave, where lights dim or brighten near certain materials. The details shift from account to account. The mood remains the same. Careful distance, cold rooms, no unnecessary touch, machines, watching machines. In some versions, the laboratories include atmospheric controls, temperature held within a narrow range, humidity monitored, air filtered, pressure managed. Workers move slowly because no one is entirely sure whether the object is inert, active, dangerous, or simply waiting for the right condition to change. The language around these stories is often clinical, less like a treasure room, more like a place built around fear of contamination, radiation, energy, release, or failure. That is another reason the underground setting feels powerful. It turns the alien secret from a spectacle into a problem. Not, look what we found, but how do we keep this from harming us, escaping us, or being seen? A hidden vault is not only a storage place, it is an admission of danger. Skeptics answer that none of this requires alien technology. Advanced human aerospace work can demand the same care. Stealth coatings may require controlled environments. Radar-absorbing materials can be sensitive, expensive, and protected. Exotic fuel systems can be dangerous. Foreign aircraft parts may be studied in secure rooms. Prototype sensors, drones, hypersonic test materials, and classified weapon systems all need secrecy, shielding, and limited access. The A-12 ox cart was hidden for a reason. The F-117 Nighthawk was hidden for a reason. Human breakthroughs can look like science fiction before they become history. That point should not be ignored. Area 51 does not need aliens to be secret, but believers return to the same answer. Maybe that is exactly why it would be chosen. A place already known for strange human technology would be the perfect cover for something stranger. If a witness sees an odd shape, it can be dismissed as a classified prototype. If a worker hears a rumor, it can be called disinformation. If a light moves in the sky, it can be placed under the wide blanket of national security. The cover story would not need to be invented. It already exists. Another theory says that the most important work may not be done by the military alone. Instead, pieces of recovered technology might be distributed among private aerospace contractors. One group receives a material sample, another receives a propulsion component, another studies electronics, optics, surface behavior, or structural strength. Each group is told it is working on a classified foreign system, a future aircraft, or a narrow engineering problem. No one is told the object's full origin. This contractor distribution theory tries to solve a practical problem. If a government had something truly beyond its own ability, it would need outside expertise. But outside expertise creates risk. Private teams talk, people retire, papers leak. So the secret would be sliced into tasks. Each task would look strange, but not complete. A hidden program spread across many rooms. A puzzle no one is allowed to assemble. For the person inside such a system, the experience might be deeply unsettling. Imagine working for months on a dull piece of metal that will not behave like ordinary metal. It bends, conducts heat strangely, resists cutting, or returns to its shape after stress. You are told not to ask where it came from. You are told only to test, report, and wait for the next sample. In time, the object becomes normal to you because your daily work makes it normal. That may be the most frightening version of the story. Not that someone sees a flying saucer once, but that people go to work every day beside fragments of the unknown, until the unknown becomes another classified task. The hidden access points, the sealed deliveries, the armed escorts, the biometric locks, the quiet briefings, the rooms without windows, the elevators, moving down through the earth. All of these details may be rumor, or they may be the ordinary language of a secure military world. Either way, inside the Area 51 myth, they serve the same purpose. They make the base feel larger than its visible shape. The satellite sees roofs. The story imagines depth. That depth is hard to argue with because no one outside can enter it. A surface hangar can be photographed. A runway can be measured. A new building can be seen from above. But an underground vault exists beyond the public eye. To deny it, one would need access. To prove it, one would need access. And access is the one thing Area 51 has always been built to refuse. This is the paradox of underground secrecy. The better the hiding place, the weaker the proof. And the weaker the proof, the stronger the legend can become for those already inclined to believe. By itself, an underground facility proves nothing. It could hold servers, spare parts, fuel systems, sensitive aircraft components, command rooms, or test equipment. It could be practical, human, and ordinary, within the logic of national security. But if even one piece of non-human technology were ever brought into that desert, the same structure would be enough to bury it from the world. That is why the theory remains. Because Area 51 is not an abandoned myth built on empty land. It is a real base in a real restricted range, with a real history of protecting aircraft the public did not know existed. It already has the surface. What is secrecy? It already has the fences, the airspace, the unmarked flights, the need-to-know culture, the distance from cities, and the mountains that hold the horizon tight. To believers, the underground world is simply the next logical layer, the place where the most dangerous questions are stored. But some stories go even further. They do not stop with metal, power sources, control panels, or strange materials. They do not end with machines under the desert. They turn towards something harder to speak about, and harder still to prove: bodies. If Area 51 hides alien technology, then the most difficult question is not about metal. It is about life. A machine can be locked in a hangar. A material sample can be placed in a vault. A power source can be shielded, studied, and watched through glass. But if something living, or once living, arrived with a craft, the nature of the secret would change. It would no longer be only an engineering problem. It would become a biological one, a medical one, a human one, and far more dangerous. This is the darkest part of the Area 51 legend, the claim that somewhere inside the military secrecy surrounding crash retrievals and hidden programs, bodies were found. Not human bodies, not test pilots, not mannequins, but small figures from somewhere else, recovered from wreckage, placed under military control, and studied in rooms the public has never seen. No part of this has been publicly proven. That needs to be said clearly. There are no confirmed bodies, no verified tissue samples, no official photographs. No document accepted by the public scientific world showing that alien biological evidence was stored at Area 51. What exists are stories, claims, alleged leaks, disputed films, deathbed statements, rumors from contractors, and the long shadow of older cases that came before Area 51 became the center of the myth. The strongest cultural root is Roswell, 1947. Officially, the Roswell incident has been explained as a weather balloon, and later, discussions tied it to classified military projects from the early Cold War. But in the alternative history of UFO belief, Roswell became something else: a crash, wreckage in the desert, strange debris handled by military personnel, and, in some versions, small humanoid bodies recovered from the site. Those bodies, believers say, were moved into government custody. The first place often named in that wider legend is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. For decades, UFO researchers have linked Wright-Patterson to the storage or study of unusual material. But as Area 51 grew in the public imagination, some versions of the story shifted west. The claim became that certain biological remains, or later samples connected to crash retrievals, may have been moved to Nevada, closer to the hidden aircraft programs and the alleged technology being studied there. The logic, for believers, is simple. If a craft were kept in one system, the bodies connected to that craft might be kept in another wing of the same secret world. Machines in one area, biology in another, different doors, same silence. The rooms described in these stories are not dramatic. They are cold, controlled, medical. People speak of climate-regulated areas below the desert floor, sealed containers, stainless steel tables, and storage chambers where temperature and humidity are watched constantly. The language is not the language of discovery, it is the language of containment. Airlocks, decontamination showers, negative pressure rooms. A negative pressure room is built so air flows into it, not out of it. If something inside is dangerous, the room helps keep it from escaping into the rest of the building. That kind of design is used in serious biological safety work. It is not made for display. It is made because someone is worried about what might be carried in the air. In the Area 51 legend, those details appear again and again. A medical research wing, blue light, sealed glass, stainless steel, air filtration, staff in protective gear, badges checked more than once, doors that do not open until the door behind you has closed, cold light, and sealed doors. Some accounts describe small bodies kept in special containers. The descriptions vary, but the same general shape often returns: 3 to 4 feet tall, thin limbs, enlarged craniums, pale or grayish skin, and features that do not match known human anatomy. Large eyes are often mentioned in popular retellings, though the more careful versions do not linger too much on theatrical details. They describe something small, fragile, and wrong in the plainest physical sense. A body that looks almost human. Almost. That word carries much of the fear, and a truly alien shape might be easier to hold at a distance. Something with no resemblance to us at all would belong clearly to the outside. But many of these stories describe forms close enough to disturb the mind. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, a face-like structure, a body plan that seems to echo us, but not enough to comfort us. The result is not simple horror, it is unease, recognition without belonging. And if such a body existed, the questions would multiply very quickly. Was it alive when found? Did it die in a crash? Was it biological, in the way humans are biological, with organs, tissue, blood, and cells? Did it carry disease? Did it breathe the same air? Did it need air at all? Was it a pilot, a passenger, a worker, a manufactured being, or something more tightly linked to the machine it traveled in? Every answer would open another door. That is why some versions of the legend do not stop with autopsies. They include claims of living or briefly surviving. Beings kept under observation in controlled environments. These accounts are rare, heavily disputed, and often told without names or documents. But they have remained in the darker corners of the story. A being behind glass, a medical team watching vital signs, communication attempts, a room cleared suddenly, records sealed, staff reassigned. Again, there is no public proof, only the story pattern. One alleged accountant speaks of an unnamed contractor who entered the wrong corridor or passed an open doorway at the wrong time and saw a surgical table inside a restricted medical room. Something small lay beneath the sheet. The witness did not see enough to identify it. That is often how these accounts work. They deny the listener a full view, a shape under cloth, a glimpse through glass, a file folder turned face down, a hallway suddenly blocked by guards. The lack of detail weakens the proof, but it strengthens the atmosphere because the mind fills the missing space. The most famous public image tied to this whole subject came in the 1990s when British producer Ray Santilli released what became known as the Alien Autopsy film. It appeared to show a medical examination of a non-human body, allegedly connected to Roswell. The footage spread widely and became one of the most discussed pieces of UFO media of its time. To some viewers, it felt like a forbidden look into a hidden government record. To many critics, it looked staged. The film did not settle anything. Over time, Santilli later said the footage was a reconstruction of a real footage he had seen, rather than the original event itself. That statement only deepened the divide. Skeptics saw it as confirmation that the film was not evidence. Believers asked whether a reconstruction could still point back to a real event. Once again, the story moved into the space between a claim and a missing original, a copy of a truth, or a story built to look like one. The Alien Autopsy film matters here, not because it proves what happened at Area 51. It does not. It matters because it shaped the way millions of people imagined the biological side of the UFO secret. The white room, the body on the table, the gloved hands, the clinical calm. The idea that if proof existed, it would not arrive with noise and panic, but through a quiet medical procedure, in a room where no one was allowed to speak freely. That image became part of the myth. Skeptics have several grounded explanations for alien body stories. Some point to high-altitude parachute tests using human-like dummies in the 1950s and 1960s. From a distance, or in memory years later, dummies connected to secret military programs could be folded into crash stories. Others point to experimental mannequins, protective suits, burned bodies from human accidents, classified equipment, hoaxes, or deliberate disinformation meant to confuse foreign intelligence and distract the public from real military work. Those explanations matter. They show how strange stories can grow from real but human sources. A small figure in a desert recovery could be a dummy. A sealed medical room could be connected to ordinary biosafety work. A rumor about alien tissue could begin with the classified human test. A film can be staged. A witness can misremember. A community can repeat a detail until it feels older than it really is. And yet, believers push back with a different point. They argue that certain body descriptions, containment details, and recovery themes appear across unrelated accounts over many years. Small forms, sealed rooms, special handling, fear of contamination. Biological study kept separate from aircraft study. The details are not always identical, but they seem to supporters to rhyme. That is not proof, but to them it is not nothing. From a scientific point of view, any unknown biological sample would be treated with extreme caution. If a government recovered tissue from a source no one understood, the first concern would be safety. Could it carry pathogens? Could it decay in a dangerous way? Could it react to air, heat, bacteria, light, or human contact? Public health labs that handle the most dangerous pathogens use biosafety level 4 containment, the highest level of care. Workers wear sealed suits, air is filtered, rooms are controlled, procedures are strict because mistakes can spread. Now imagine the same level of caution applied to something not from Earth. Even the possibility would change everything. This is where the biological claims connect back to the technological ones. A craft and its occupants would not be separate mysteries. They would explain each other. The size of a cockpit might make more sense if the pilots were small. The control systems might make more sense if they were built for different hands, different bodies, or different senses. The lack of normal switches might make more sense if the craft responded to touch, thought, body heat, or some unknown biological signal. Some theories go further and suggest a biomechanical link between craft and pilot. In that view, the machine is not merely flown, it is paired with its operator in some deeper way. The craft might respond to nervous signals, biological rhythms, or a control system that feels alive because it was never meant to be separate from life. This idea is highly speculative, and it should be treated that way, but it shows why alleged bodies matter so much to the Area 51 story. If the pilot is unknown, the machine is unknown in a deeper way, and if the machine is unknown, the pilot may be the key to it. There's a quiet sadness inside these claims that is easy to miss. UFO stories often focus on fear, power, and secrecy, but alleged biological evidence, if true, would also mean that something died here, or was brought here after dying somewhere else. A being from a world we do not understand, placed under lights, measured, cut, preserved, hidden, and turned into a state secret. The thought is not only frightening, it is lonely. A body without a name, a history without a witness, a grave without a sky. That emotional weight is part of why the stories endure. They are not just about what the government might know. They are about what kind of contact may have already happened without the public being allowed to grieve it, fear it, or understand it. If bodies existed, then the question of alien life would not be theoretical. It would have weight. It would have tissue. It would have a room temperature, a container number, a file, a chain of custody. But the hard limit remains. No confirmed photographs, no verified documents, no physical samples, no body, no public record has proven that Area 51 held alien remains, living beings, or biological evidence of non-human life. The claim stands in shadow, supported by testimony and story, but not by evidence the world can test. A careful telling has to leave it there, in shadow. Still, the claim refuses to disappear, because it feels like the final locked room behind every other locked room. If the craft are real, where are the pilots? If the wreckage was recovered, what came with it? If unknown technology was studied, did anyone study the hands that operated it? And if such work happened, Would any government ever admit it before it was forced to? That is the deepest pressure in the biological side of the Area 51 legend. Not that we know, but that the question is too large to rest. The machines may be the easier secret. Metal can be explained as a prototype. Lights can be explained as drones. A hidden runway can be explained as national defense. But a body, if it existed, would tear through every safe answer at once. It would mean we are not alone in the most literal way possible. It would mean the border between rumor and history had already been crossed. That is why the stories are so guarded. That is why they are so disputed. That is why they remain. Still with us, if you are, take a quiet moment here. We have already moved past the fences, the dry lake bed, the hidden hangars, the underground theories, and the darkest claims tied to biological evidence. And still, the central question remains where it has always been. What is truly hidden out there in the Nevada desert? If you are enjoying this slow journey into Area 51, you can like the video. And if you want more long stories about UFO secrets, hidden programs, and strange mysteries that never fully leave the dark, you can subscribe and return with us again. The strongest Area 51 stories are not always the ones told from outside the fence. They come from people who claim they were already past it. Not tourists, not distant watchers with cameras on cold ridges, not drivers who saw a light from a lonely road, but people who say they wore the badge, crossed the checkpoint, rode the bus, guarded the door, repaired the wire, swept the floor, watched the radar screen, or stood in a room where something was covered and no one was allowed to ask why. These are the insider accounts. They are difficult stories to handle because they carry two kinds of force at once. On one side, they feel close to the source. An insider does not need to guess what happens behind the perimeter. They claim to have been there. They claim to have seen one corner of the hidden system with their own eyes. On the other side, most of these accounts arrive without names, without documents, without photographs, and often without enough detail to test. That makes them powerful and fragile. The people in these stories come from many roles: engineers, guards, contractors, pilots, radar technicians, medics, avionics specialists, machinists. These temporary workers brought in for one task and then sent away. Some claim they worked directly on strange objects. Others say they only saw a room, a container, a tarped shape, a radar trace, a sealed medicals bay, or a material sample that did not behave as it should. Very few claim to know the whole truth. That may be the most realistic part of the legend. In a place built around secrecy, the full picture would be rare. A guard might know only that a certain door must not be opened. A radar technician might know only that a certain return on the screen was not to be logged in the normal way. A contractor might know only that a crate arrived under unusual escort. A medic might know only that a room was sealed, cleared, and watched more closely than anything else in the building. Each account is a shard, not the mirror. Some insiders speak publicly, others appear only in old interviews, blurred recordings, private conversations, or stories passed through researchers. Some wait until retirement. Some speak from outside the United States. Some hide their faces or alter their voices. Their fear, whether real or performed, becomes part of the story. They say they signed papers. They say they were warned. They say pensions, freedom, and family safety were used to keep people quiet. There is no way to accept all of it without question. There is also no way to ignore the pattern completely. One alleged account comes from a radar technician in the late 1960s. According to the story, he was monitoring activity over Groom Lake when impossible blips appeared inside restricted airspace. On radar, a blip is not a glowing saucer or detailed shape. It is just a return, a mark that says something is there. But this mark, he claimed, moved in ways that did not fit ordinary flight. It accelerated, stopped, changed position, and then vanished. The technician asked about it. The answer from a superior was short. "Don't ask again." That line has stayed in the lore because it says almost nothing, and yet suggests so much. It does not confirm alien craft. It does not explain a program. It does not give a name, a file number, or a mission. It simply closes the door. Silence as an answer. For a skeptic, the radar story could have many explanations. Equipment glitches happen. Classified tests happen. Radar can produce strange returns under certain conditions. A superior may shut down a question because the answer involves a human aircraft the technician did not need to know about. In a secure range, not every strange mark on a screen is a doorway into another world, but believers hear something else. In the command not to ask, they hear the culture of suppression. They hear the rule that some things are noticed, but not spoken. They hear the fear that even curiosity could cross a boundary. And Area 51 is built from boundaries. Another account comes from a former guard who said he was assigned to an overnight post inside a hangar. He was not told what the space contained. He was given a simple order: do not approach the floor area and do not look under the tarps. The instruction itself carried weight. Most guards are told what to watch. This one, according to the story, was told what not to see. During the shift, he claimed he glimpsed a smooth, curved hull beneath partial cover. Light moved across it in a way he later compared to liquid on metal. There were no sharp aircraft edges visible from where he stood. No wheels, no tail, no open panels. Just a hidden curve in a room that felt too controlled for ordinary storage. Again, the story gives too little for proof, but it gives enough for unease. The guard did not say he touched it. He did not say he walked around it. He did not say a door opened and revealed some great truth. He stood where he was told to stand, watched what he was told to guard, and left with the sense that the real order had not been about security. It had been about ignorance. Contractor testimony often takes this form: fragmentary, narrow, almost frustrating. Drivers describe sealed crates. Electricians describe locked rooms with unusual power requirements. Maintenance workers describe corridors they could use on one day and not the next. A person is cleared for a task, escorted through a building, shown one space, then escorted out again. They do not know the full program. They may not even know the name of the facility they entered. That is the nature of compartmentalized work. It is also the reason these stories never fully settle. One alleged avionics specialist said he worked on what he was told was a foreign technology evaluation program. That phrase matters. Foreign technology evaluation can mean very human things. Captured aircraft, enemy systems, unknown hardware from another nation. During the Cold War and after, studying foreign equipment was a real and serious task. So, even if the setting is true, the origin may not be alien at all. But the specialist claimed the object he saw did not resemble any human system he knew. He described seamless interior panels, curved surfaces with no visible wiring, and lights that appeared when touched, though no normal power source could be seen. In ordinary avionics, systems leave traces: wires, connectors, boxes, labels, switches, access panels. Designers need maintenance paths because machines break and humans must fix them. But this object, he said, did not seem built for human hands. It responded. That was the word that mattered. If the account is false, it is a well-shaped story. If it is true, it raises a harder question. What kind of control system has no clear controls? What kind of machine hides its workings so completely that trained technicians cannot find the usual signs of design? Skeptics would say that advanced human interfaces can look strange to someone not briefed on the system. Touch-sensitive panels, hidden wiring, composite materials, and unusual layouts are not proof of alien origin. A worker kept outside the full program may mistake deliberate secrecy for impossible technology. That is fair, but the account remains part of the pattern because it points to the same thing again. A machine that does not reveal itself in human terms. Then there is the machinist story. An unnamed worker claimed to have handled a dull, silvery sheet in the 1990s, a piece of material that could be folded like paper and then returned to its original form without a crease. Shape memory materials do exist in human science. Some metals and alloys can return to a previous shape under certain conditions, so the idea itself is not impossible or magical. But the witness claimed this material behaved beyond what he had seen before. Light, thin, strong, and strangely obedient to its original shape, a sheet that would not stay broken. For believers, the story echoes older crash retrieval claims, where witnesses described debris that could be crumpled and then would smooth itself out. For skeptics, it is another case where a real class of advanced material may have been turned into alien evidence through secrecy and rumor. A machinist working on classified materials may not know the full technical explanation. A strange alloy can become stranger when no one is allowed to describe it openly. Both readings can exist in the same room. That is the trouble. The biological insider accounts are rarer and much more disputed. One former medic allegedly claimed he monitored a small humanoid figure on a gurney inside a sealed medical bay for 2 nights before the room was emptied. The story offers little public detail. No name, no medical chart, no photograph, no body. Only a claim that the figure was small, guarded, and kept under conditions that felt more like containment than ordinary care. This kind of account sits at the far edge of the legend. It is the easiest to doubt. It is also the hardest to forget. A craft can be mistaken for a prototype. A material can be mistaken for an alloy. A radar return can be explained as a classified test or glitch. But a body on a gurney, if seen clearly, is a different kind of claim. It leaves less room for ordinary confusion, which means the story either moves closer to revelation or collapses more fully into fabrication. There is not much middle ground, and this is where disinformation enters the story. Intelligence agencies have reasons to confuse. They may mix truth with falsehood. To protect real programs, they may allow wild stories to grow because wild stories make serious leaks look foolish. They may feed rumors about aliens to distract from advanced human aircraft. They may let believers chase the wrong mystery while the real project moves somewhere else entirely. In that view, the Area 51 alien legend is not simply a mistake, it is useful. If foreign analysts hear that strange lights over Nevada are alien craft, they may spend less time asking which human platform is being tested. If the public argues over bodies, saucers, and impossible fuel, the real work on stealth aircraft, drones, propulsion, sensors, or weapons may stay hidden in plain sight. A ridiculous cover can be a very strong cover if it makes serious inquiry look embarrassing. This is the skeptical view at its strongest. Not that every witness is lying, but that the story world around Area 51 may have been shaped, nudged, and polluted on purpose. Believers answer that disinformation cuts both ways. If false stories are used to protect true secrets, then the presence of false stories does not prove there is no deeper secret. It may prove only that someone wanted the waters muddy. A hoax does not erase a leak. A fake document does not mean every witness is wrong. A wild claim can be planted beside a real one to make both look absurd, and so the listener is left in a difficult place. The insider accounts may contain mistakes. Some may be lies. Some may be memories changed by time, fear, and retelling. Some may be deliberate disinformation. Some may be ordinary classified work, misread through the lens of a UFO belief. But some may be honest fragments. That possibility is what keeps the chapter open. The repeated details are not proof, but they gather weight. Tight access, sealed rooms, smooth surfaces, strange materials, objects under tarps, orders not to ask, workers who see only one piece, security that seems less about theft than about knowledge itself. Across the stories, the same shape returns, a system where people are allowed close enough to serve the secret, but not close enough to understand it. That may be the most believable part of all, not a grand reveal, a workplace of partial truths. For a person inside such a system, even the strange may become routine. You badge in. You surrender what you are told to surrender. You follow the escort. You do the task. You do not speak names in hallways. You do not take notes home. You do not ask why the material behaves strangely, why the room is sealed, why the object is covered, or why a question makes the air change. You learn the limits. Then you live inside them. And if, years later, you decide to speak, you face another problem. The world asks for proof, and proof is exactly what the system was built to keep from you. You have no photographs because cameras were not allowed. No documents because documents never left the building. No samples because samples were counted. No names because everyone used first names, badges, job codes, or nothing at all. All you have is memory. Memory is human, and human memory can break. That is why these accounts must be handled with care. To believe all of them would be careless. To mock all of them would be cruel. Somewhere between those two failures is the only honest place to stand. Listen closely, mark the patterns, mark the gaps, notice where the stories overlap, and notice where they ask for more than they can give. The insider accounts do not prove that Area 51 holds alien technology or biological evidence, but they give the legend its human voice. Without them, Area 51 would be only a base, a fence, a dry lake bed, and a set of old aircraft programs. With them, it becomes a place of witnessed fragments, a guard at a post, a technician at a screen, a medic in a sealed wing, a machinist with a sheet of strange metal in his hands, a person told in one way or another that the safest thing to do is look away. And perhaps that is why these stories remain so unsettling. They do not open the door fully, they only let a little air out from the room behind it. Enough to know something is there, not enough to name it. If the insiders are wrong, then Area 51 remains a secret human machine, guarded by myth and fear. If even one of them is right, then the most important truth in modern history may have been seen not by presidents or crowds or scientists on a public stage, but by a worker in a corridor, a guard under dim lights, or a technician told to stop asking questions. That is a strange thought, a heavy one, because the secret, if it exists, may not have survived through one perfect lie. It may have survived through thousands of small silences. The sky above Groom Lake is not just sky. It is controlled space, restricted space, a wide, invisible ceiling over the desert where ordinary traffic does not belong. The designation R4808N may sound dry, like something written on a map or in a flight manual, but for anyone who studies Area 51, it carries weight. It marks the air above one of the most guarded test environments in the United States. To most people, the desert looks open. To pilots, that air is closed, and that is part of what makes the report so strange. If something appears above Groom Lake, it is not drifting over a random highway or a crowded city where any passing aircraft might be mistaken for something else. It is appearing inside or near a block of air where movement is expected to be controlled. Watched, cleared, allowed. That changes the question. Not only what was seen, but why it was there. Over the years, the air around Area 51 has become one of the most watched pieces of sky in UFO culture. People have carried cameras to Tikaboo Peak. They have parked along the extraterrestrial highway. They have waited through cold nights and dark mornings, watching for motion over the Groom Mountains, the lake bed, and the hidden base beyond the ridges. Some come expecting nothing. Others come with stories already in their heads, but all of them understand the same thing. If something unusual moves there, it matters. Many sightings are simple at first. A light appears low over the base. It holds still. It moves slowly to one side. It brightens, dims, changes color, or rises into the dark. Sometimes it behaves just enough like a normal aircraft to be dismissed. Other times, witnesses say the movement breaks the pattern. A sudden stop, a vertical climb, a sharp turn without banking, a burst of speed followed by instant stillness. These are the traits that return again and again. Hovering, silence, sudden acceleration, no visible thrust, no sonic boom. Of course, the first explanation is not alien. Around Area 51, the first explanation should always be classified testing. This is the home of aircraft that once seemed impossible because the public had never seen them before. The A-12 Oxcart was tested in that world. The SR-71 Blackbird came from the same high-speed family of secret Cold War design. The F-117 Nighthawk later showed how strange a human aircraft could look when its shape was built around radar, not beauty. Before those machines were known, they must have looked like rumors with wings. That matters. A secret aircraft can seem otherworldly when seen at the wrong distance, at the wrong hour, by someone who does not know what program is flying. A drone may not sound like a jet. A stealth aircraft may reflect light in a way the eye does not expect. A flare can seem to hang. Desert darkness can erase scale. A distant turn can look like a sudden stop. At night, the mind works hard to make sense of small points of light. Skeptics are right to point this out. The Area 51 sky is strange because humans made it strange. But some reports do not fit easily into that frame, at least not for the people who saw them. One account comes from an unnamed former Air Force pilot. He described seeing a bright object drifting silently over the base. At first, it did not rush. It did not streak. It simply held itself in the air, steady enough to draw attention. Then it stopped, fixed in place, and shot upward with a speed that seemed to ignore every normal rule of flight. He later described the departure in plain words. It might as well have been teleportation. That line is remembered because it does not try to sound technical. It is not a claim about a measured speed or a radar file in public hands. It is a pilot reaching for the closest human word to describe motion that felt beyond motion. One moment, the object was there. The next, it had gone upward so fast the eye could barely follow. A climb without a climb. To a skeptic, even that account can be challenged. The distance may have been misread. The object may have been much closer or much farther away than it seemed. A classified test may have included lighting or movement patterns that were not familiar. A pilot, despite experience, can still misjudge a strange view in darkness. Expertise matters, but it does not make a person perfect. Still, experience also cannot be dismissed. A pilot knows the feeling of ordinary aircraft behavior. A pilot understands turns, climbs, speed, relative motion, and the difference between a plane moving away and something seeming to vanish. So when a trained observer says a motion looked impossible, the statement carries more weight than a casual glance from a passing road. Not proof, weight. Other stories from the 1990s describe glowing orbs above the Groom Mountains. In some accounts, lights rose from behind the ridgeline and formed a triangle, holding their positions as if linked by a structure no one could see. Then, after a short time, they vanished in less than a second. Not faded, not drifted away. Vanished. The triangle shape became its own kind of trigger for speculation. It could suggest 3 separate objects flying in formation. It could suggest lights on one larger craft. It could suggest a test pattern, a flare arrangement, a military exercise, or a human platform viewed from an angle that hid the body. Like so much around Area 51, the site offers several doors and no key, but the witnesses remember the timing, the stillness before the disappearance, the way the mountain line sat black beneath the lights, the quiet after they were gone. Some Nevada residents and workers near the region have described lights that seem to appear after unusual ground activity. Convoys, patrols, heavy equipment moving near the restricted land, increased security at certain approaches. Then, after sunset or before dawn, something moving above the range. This timing pattern has helped keep the test flight idea alive. If ground crews move first and strange lights follow, the mind links them. That link may be correct. It may also be a trap. At a secret military site, ground movement could precede any number of human tests: drones, sensors, aircraft, radar trials, communication systems, countermeasures, or training operations. The more secret the work, the stranger the preparation may look from outside. A watcher who sees trucks and then a light may assume one caused the other, but the true connection could be much more ordinary or much stranger. One reported civilian pilot account adds another layer. The pilot was flying at 25,000 feet when he allegedly saw a metallic sphere without wings or visible propulsion. The object paced his aircraft for nearly a minute. It did not behave like a balloon drifting in wind. It did not show the shape of a normal plane. Then it darted away with sudden speed. At 25,000 feet, a pilot is not standing on a road guessing at a far horizon. He is already in the sky, working inside the world where aircraft belong. A wingless sphere pacing an airplane at altitude is not easy to place. In ordinary terms, could it have been a classified drone, a reflective balloon, a sensor platform, a mistake of distance and light? Possibly. But the report carries the same traits, heard in other accounts: no wings, no visible thrust, controlled movement, sudden departure. the same shape of mystery. Inside UFO research, these repeated traits matter more than any single sighting. One witness can be wrong. One light can be misread. One camera can lie. But when reports over many years keep describing silent hovering, instant acceleration, right-angle turns, vertical climbs, and a lack of sonic booms, the pattern begins to feel larger than one event. That is why the Area 51 sky has become so important. It gives the legend movement. The hangars are closed. The alleged underground rooms are hidden. The biological claims are locked behind testimony and dispute. But the sky is different. The sky is where something, if it flies, must briefly enter the open. Even restricted air cannot fully hide motion once it rises high enough to be seen from a peak, a road, or another aircraft. For believers, those brief appearances are cracks in the wall. For skeptics, they are exactly what should happen around an advanced test range. Both sides agree on one thing: something has been tested there. The disagreement is over origin. The known human history is impressive enough by itself. The A on 12 ox cart pushed speed and altitude into a realm that had to remain hidden. The SR-71 Blackbird became a symbol of what secret aerospace design could achieve. The F-117 Nighthawk showed that a machine built to hide from radar could look unlike the graceful aircraft people expected. If those programs were possible, then later secret aircraft may be even stranger. Maybe the lights are human genius under cover of darkness. Maybe the most impossible looking flight is simply the next thing the public has not been allowed to see yet. That possibility should stay in the room. But then the reports return to details that strain the normal frame. No sonic boom after extreme speed. No visible exhaust. No engine sound. Objects that seem to go from stillness to tremendous speed without acceleration in between. Motions that would crush a human pilot if the craft had a human pilot inside. Turns too sharp for known aircraft. Climbs that do not feel like lift, thrust, or momentum as we understand them. This is where the alien interpretation finds its strongest emotional ground, not in the mere presence of lights, in the behavior. A light moving across the sky is not enough. A light that stops in place, holds there, then rises straight up at impossible speed over one of the most restricted military sites in America becomes harder to forget, especially when no one explains it. The restricted nature of the airspace also creates a strange paradox. If an unknown craft appears over Groom Lake, then either the military knows it is there, or the military cannot stop it. Both possibilities are unsettling. If it is allowed, then it may be part of a program. If it is not allowed, then something has entered one of the most guarded skies in the country without permission. Either answer deepens the mystery. There are more ordinary possibilities, of course. Tests can be misread. Observers may not know what they are seeing. A drone may be mistaken for a sphere. A classified aircraft may carry lighting systems meant to confuse tracking. A platform moving toward the observer may seem still, then appear to dart away when it changes direction. Atmospheric layers can bend light. Desert air can turn distance into a trick. But ordinary explanations work best when ordinary movement is reported. They struggle when the report itself centers on the absence of ordinary movement. No banking turn, no engine trail, no slow build of speed, no sound reaching the ground. This does not prove alien technology. It does not prove Bob Lazar was right. It does not prove S4 exists or that craft of unknown origin have flown above Groom Lake, but it explains why the sky over Area 51 remains a part of the story. The base may hide its buildings, its rooms, its files, and its people. But wait, the sky is harder to keep completely still. Sooner or later, something rises, and when it does, the watchers remember. A bright point above the mountains, a metallic sphere at altitude, a triangle of lights forming. Over the range, a silent object, a holding position, where aircraft should keep moving. These are not the whole truth, but they are the sparks that keep the larger question alive. What are they testing out there? For many, the answer is simple. Advanced human aircraft, built in silence, flown in darkness, protected until the day they are ready to be named. For others, the answer reaches further. They believe the lights are glimpses of recovered technology in motion. A craft being tested after years of study. A machine that does not fly against gravity, but uses gravity as part of its movement. A vehicle that rises without thrust because it was never built around the same limits as our own. Element 115 did not enter the Area 51 story through a laboratory paper. It entered through Bob Lazar. That matters because from the beginning, it was not just a chemical name or a place on the periodic table. It was a bridge, a small, strange bridge between the sealed facilities near Groom Lake, the alleged craft Lazar said he saw, and the deeper claim that something hidden in the Nevada desert could bend the rules of flight itself. For people who believed Lazar, element 115 was the key. Not the shape of the craft, not the hidden doors, not even the number of machines he claimed were stored near Papoose Lake. The real key was the fuel, the thing at the center of the reactor, the material that made impossible movement possible. In Lazar's account, a stable form of element 115 powered the craft he said he worked on. He described it not as a giant engine, not as a jet system, not as anything that burned fuel in a normal way. It was more like the heart of the machine, a small amount of matter held under tight control, able to produce an effect that did not behave like normal thrust. The image is almost quiet. Small metallic wedges, heavy, dull, kept in protective containers, handled under strict security because of radiation concerns. Not glowing treasure, not a magic stone, just material, controlled and guarded, treated as if one wrong move could matter. That plainness is part of why the story stayed with people. A wilder version might have been easier to dismiss, but Lazar's claim had the feeling of a workplace detail, a substance, a container, a handling rule, a technical reason people did not stand too close or touch too casually. And then came the larger claim. According to Lazar, element 115 was used in a reactor that generated a gravity-like field. In simple terms, he said the craft did not fly by pushing against air. It did not need wings to lift it. It did not need exhaust to move it forward. Instead, the system created a distortion around the craft, allowing it to move by changing its relationship to space itself. That idea is why element 115 became famous, because if such a system existed, it would explain so much of the UFO behavior witnesses describe. Silent hovering, sudden acceleration, vertical climbs, no contrail, no sonic boom, no visible sign of force pushing the machine through the air. The craft would not be fighting the sky the way our aircraft do. It would be using something deeper than the sky. That is the promise. Inside Lazar's claim, a machine not riding through space, a machine changing space around it. For believers, this seemed to give the old sightings a technical spine. The strange motions over the desert were no longer just lights. They became possible tests of a propulsion system. The sealed craft were no longer just shapes. They became vehicles built around a physics hidden from public view. The story of Area 51 was no longer only about storage. It was about power. But Element 115 also became one of the sharpest points of disagreement. In 2003, scientists did synthesize Element 115. It was later named Moscovium. That fact is real. It is part of the known periodic table. Supporters of Lazar often point to this as one of the most interesting parts of his story. He publicly spoke about Element 115 years before it was officially made in a lab, and later the element became real. To them, that is not small. It feels like a signal, a detail that arrived too early. But the scientific answer is more careful. The periodic table already suggested that heavier elements beyond those known at the time could exist. Naming Element 115 did not require access to an alien program. It could have been a prediction based on the structure of chemistry itself. Scientists expected that new heavy elements would be created as technology improved. So, the fact that Element 115 was later synthesized does not prove Lazar had seen a stable alien fuel. And the known version of Moscovium creates a deeper problem for the claim. The isotopes produced in laboratories are highly unstable. They decay rapidly. They do not last as a useful fuel. They do not sit quietly in a container for long-term use. They do not, in public science, create a gravity field or power a craft. They appear for brief moments, break down, and vanish into other products. That is the gap. The lab element is real. Lazar's fuel remains unproven. For the entire Element 115 mystery, everything turns on that missing word, stable. Lazar did not merely say, Element 115 could be made for an instant. He claimed there was a stable form of it, a version that could last, be stored, be handled, and be used in a reactor system. Without stability, the claim collapses into coincidence and misunderstanding. With stability, if it were ever proven, the claim would become one of the most important scientific secrets in history. This is why the debate has never fully ended. Skeptics say the known science does not support the fuel claim. They say unstable Moscovium does not match what Lazar described. They say the prediction of a numbered element was not special enough to carry the weight placed on it. They say a person can name a future element without having worked on a craft from somewhere else, and they are right to demand more. A claim this large cannot rest on a name alone. Believers answer that the public version of a thing is not always the complete version. They ask whether a stable isotope could exist beyond what has been made in open laboratories. They point to the idea, often discussed, around very heavy elements, that some combinations of protons and neutrons might last longer than others. They ask whether a material recovered from elsewhere could include forms we have not yet produced or cannot produce under known conditions. That is a possibility in the broadest sense, but possibility is not proof. The missing sample remains missing. This is what gives Element 115 its strange power in UFO culture. It feels tangible, but it cannot be touched. It has a number. It has a modern name, Moscovium. It has a place in science. But the version that matters to the Area 51 story is not the version the public can test. It is the alleged stable version, the hidden version, the one said to sit behind security inside containers, connected to a reactor no one outside the story has seen. A real name for an unproven thing, That is a very powerful kind of mystery. Some versions of the Area 51 legend include a reactor core account tied to the same idea. A secured spherical device, a faint blue glow, no visible wiring, no fuel lines, no ordinary power source. The kind of object that, if seen in isolation, would be hard to place. He worries inside normal engineering, not because it looked dramatic, but because it lacked the expected signs. A machine normally tells you how it is fed, where cables enter, where fuel moves, where heat leaves, where danger is managed. But in these stories, the core seems almost sealed against understanding. Smooth, contained, quiet, and separated from the kinds of support systems human machines usually need. That does not prove anything. A classified device can hide its workings. A prototype can be built to conceal sensitive design. A witness can miss what they are not trained to see. Still, the image stays. A sphere under guard. A faint blue light. A room where no one speaks too loudly. If stable element 115 existed, the storage and transport problems would be enormous. It would not be treated like ordinary metal. It would need shielded containers. It would need constant tracking. It would need armed escorts, special handling, and facilities designed for both secrecy and safety. Anyone moving it would likely know only the next step, not the full journey. One person signs the container out, another guards the route, another opens the receiving room, another conducts the test. No one sees the whole chain. That fits the wider Area 51 pattern. Material that important would not be left where one person could steal it, photograph it, or understand it fully. It would be divided by task, guarded by rule, and locked behind language. People might not even call it Element 115 in daily work. It might have a code name, a project number, a storage label, or no spoken name at all. The most sensitive secrets often survive by becoming born on paper. A box, a sample, a transfer, a file. Only the few who know the meaning understand the weight. For Lazar's supporters, the absence of a public sample is exactly what they would expect. If the material powers craft beyond known human engineering, no government would allow even a sliver of it into public hands. Its release would change military power, energy research, transportation, and perhaps the entire human understanding of physics. It would be guarded more fiercely than any weapon. For skeptics, that answer is too convenient. Every missing piece is explained by secrecy. No sample because it is hidden. No document because it is classified. No photograph because cameras are banned. No independent test because no one can get close. At a certain point, they argue, the claim becomes protected from the very evidence needed to support it. That criticism matters. A secret can explain why proof is absent, but it cannot replace proof, and so element 115 remains suspended between two worlds. In one world, it is moscovium, a heavy synthetic element made in laboratories, unstable and short-lived. In the other, it is the hidden fuel of alien craft, stable, powerful, and able to create effects that would change everything. The two worlds touch through a shared number, but they do not confirm each other. That is the whole mystery in miniature. Area 51 is real. The alien claim is unproven. Element 115 is real. Lazar's version is unproven. Groom Lake hid advanced aircraft. It has not been shown to hide machines from elsewhere. The story keeps placing one foot on known ground and the other in shadow. That is why it still works on the imagination. If element 115 had remained only a strange phrase from one man's story, perhaps it would have faded. But the later creation of Moscovium gave it a second life. It gave believers something to point at, and skeptics something to explain. It made the claim feel close to science, even while the central part of the claim stayed outside scientific reach. A number became a symbol, not just of a fuel, but of the larger Area 51 question. How much can be hidden inside a system built for secrecy? How many years can pass before a classified truth becomes public? How many impossible things are only impossible because the public has not yet been shown the room where they are being tested? These questions do not prove Lazar right. They explain why people keep listening. Because element 115 is not only about chemistry. It is about withheld possibility. It is the dream of a small piece of matter that could explain the silent craft, the sudden climbs, the impossible turns, and the lights that leave no sound behind. It is the hope, or the fear, that somewhere inside a restricted program, a new kind of motion has already been found. If true, the consequences would not stay inside Area 51 forever. A stable power source that could alter gravity-like fields would change more than aircraft. It would change military balance. It would change energy. It would change transportation. It might change the old human feeling of being trapped by distance, weight, fuel, and speed. It would become the kind of discovery governments do not simply announce before they know how to control it. If false, then element 115 is still important in another way. It shows how a technical detail can make a legend feel real. A name, a number, a future element, a claim of stability, a reactor, a faint blue glow. These are the pieces that let a story move from rumor into something that sounds almost like a briefing. Even without proof, the detail gives the listener a handle, something to hold, something to doubt, something to return to. That may be why the element 115 claim has lasted longer than many other parts of UFO lore. It is specific enough to be remembered, scientific enough to feel grounded, and hidden enough to remain unresolved. It can be argued from both sides without either side fully closing the door. A coincidence, a prediction, a leak, a myth, a fuel. The answer depends on where you stand. And around Area 51, where you stand has always mattered. Outside the gate, element 115 is a story. Inside the legend, it is the heart of the machine. In the laboratory, Moscovium decays almost as soon as it appears. In Lazar's account, a stable form waits behind the walls of secrecy, powerful enough to make a craft move, as if gravity itself had become a tool. Between those two versions lies the shadow that keeps the mystery alive. Night changes. Groom Lake. In daylight, the place can look almost stripped of meaning from a distance. Pale earth, hard lines, mountains holding the horizon, a dry basin that seems too flat, too empty, too exposed to hide anything more than heat and dust. But after dark, the same land becomes harder to read. The edges soften, the ridges turn black, the lake bed disappears into shadow, and the sky above it becomes the only surface left to watch. That is when the lights matter. For decades, witnesses near Area 51 have described strange lights over Groom Lake. Some glow steadily, some change color, some hover as if fixed to a point in the air. Some move in short, sharp paths that do not resemble ordinary flight. Others rise vertically, fade out, reappear, or vanish so suddenly that the witness is left staring at the empty place where the light had been. A light in the desert is not proof of anything, but over Groom Lake, no light feels simple. The people who go there to watch understand this. They stand on distant legal ground, sometimes at Tickaboo Peak, sometimes near roads that lead toward the main gate, sometimes along lonely stretches of desert where the boundary is felt more than seen. They know they are looking toward restricted airspace, toward R4808N, also called Restricted Area 4808 North. They know most ordinary aircraft are not supposed to wander freely there. They know the base has a history of testing machines, long before the public was allowed to name them. So when something bright moves over that land, the mind does not leave it alone. It begins asking what kind of test leaves no sound. The skeptical answer comes first, as it should. Area 51 exists for secret work. Strange lights above a secret aircraft base may simply be signs of secret aircraft. Drones, stealth platforms, flares, radar tests, sensor trials, and classified prototypes can all look odd from far away. Add darkness, heat shimmer, dust, lens, artifacts, and the long reach of the desert, and a normal test can become an impossible sight. In memory, the F-117 Nighthawk is a useful reminder. Before it was public, its shape did not match what people expected an aircraft to be. It was angular, black, and strange, a machine built around hiding from radar rather than pleasing the eye. If a person had glimpsed it before its official reveal, especially at night, they might have carried that image home as something almost unreal. A human machine can look alien before it is explained. That is true, but it does not end the story, because the reports that last are not usually about one steady light moving like a plane. They are about traits that seem to step outside normal flight. A glow that stops in place, a point of light that zigzags without banking, a sphere that climbs straight up with no visible trail, a color change followed by disappearance, a light that seems to break apart, then merge back into one object, and always, in the strongest accounts, the same missing thing. Sound, no engine, no roar, no boom. One account describes a group camping near the boundary who saw a glowing sphere about the size of a car drift over the perimeter fence. The witnesses said it moved slowly at first, as if it were crossing from one zone into another. It did not blink like a navigation light. It did not flash like a beacon. It gave off a steady glow, enough to mark its shape, but not enough to light the ground below. Then it stopped. For nearly a minute, according to the account, the sphere hovered in place. A full minute can feel very long when the mind is trying to decide whether it is watching a machine, a flare, a drone, or something it has no word for. The witnesses waited for sound, for motion that made sense, for any sign that the object belonged to the known world. Then it accelerated upward. No contrail, no sonic boom, no sound. That last detail is where the account takes hold. A rapid upward movement should leave some trace. If the object were an aircraft, one expects thrust, heat, noise, or at least the sense of force pushing against air. If it were a flare, one expects drift and burn. If it were a balloon, one expects the slow obedience of wind. The witnesses claimed none of those things fit. The object simply left, a clean departure into dark sky. Skeptics can still answer. Distance can fool the eye, and a small object close by can seem large and far away. A distant aircraft climbing can appear vertical. Sound can fail to reach observers because of wind, temperature layers, or distance. A drone could hover and move in ways older aircraft cannot. Flares and training exercises can create bright, strange moments over restricted land. These explanations are not weak, but they often explain parts of the story better than the whole. That is why Groom Lake lights remain difficult. Each individual detail can sometimes be softened. The color might be atmospheric, the size might be misjudged, the silence might be distance, the movement might be angle. But when a witness puts all of it together, the event feels different. A steady sphere, a hover, a vertical climb, no trail, no boom, no sound. The whole becomes stranger than the pieces. Another report from the mid-1990s comes from two hikers who allegedly saw a brilliant blue light above the runway area. It appeared high enough to be seen from their position, but low enough that they tied it to the base itself. The light moved horizontally at first, then seemed to tilt. After that, it shot upward at an angle the witnesses described as impossible for an ordinary plane. The blue color stayed with them. Blue light in the desert has a strange quality. It does not feel warm. It does not belong to campfires, town windows, or car headlights. It feels cold, almost electrical. In the account, the light did not behave like a distant star, a satellite, or a normal aircraft beacon. It moved with purpose, then left with violence, hidden inside silence. Later, the story says, it returned with a dim red companion glow. That detail is small, but it gives the account its uneasy character. One light is already enough to puzzle over. A second light changes the mood. It suggests formation, pairing, control, or some unknown relationship between 2 points in the sky. Were they separate craft, parts of the same test? Navigation lights on a platform whose body could not be seen, or simply two unrelated lights brought together by a mind already alarmed? There is no way to know from the account alone, and yet the image remains. A bright blue light above the runway, then red in the dark. The camo dudes appear in many stories about Groom Lake lights, not always as actors, but as a presence. Some witnesses claim unusual lights appeared only after security vehicles arrived in the area, or that security seemed to position itself before a certain night defense activity. To believers, that suggests planned testing. To skeptics, it may only mean security is always near places where watchers gather. The trucks are part of the environment, so the mind links them to whatever happens next. Still, the feeling is hard to shake. A person stands in the desert with a camera. A white or tan truck sits on a ridge. Nobody speaks. Then a light rises over the base. Whether or not the two events are connected, the witness experiences them as one story. Watched from the ground, watched from the ridge, a light in the sky between them. Area 51 has always been good at making ordinary observation feel forbidden. That feeling can sharpen every sighting. Some reports describe lights that begin in familiar form and then turn strange. 3 or 4 points move like aircraft lights, spaced apart in a way the mind accepts. Then the spacing changes too quickly. The points draw together. What looked like separate navigation lights seems to merge into a single orb. The object holds still, brightens once, and vanishes. It is this blending of ordinary and impossible that unsettles witnesses most. If a sighting begins as obviously strange, the mind may reject it at once, but when it begins in a known shape, something the witness almost understands, and then slowly breaks the rules, the experience becomes harder to dismiss. The familiar becomes wrong in front of you. A plane that is not a plane, a formation that becomes one light, a motion that removes itself from explanation. Restricted Area 4, 808 North is ideal for testing almost anything that must stay hidden. The open desert provides space. The lack of civilian traffic reduces the chance of collision or observation. The range can be controlled, scheduled, and cleared. Instruments can be placed on the ground. Radar can track what needs tracking. Security can keep people far enough away that every public sighting becomes partial, uncertain, and easy to argue over. That is the practical side. If a secret drone is tested there, the setup makes sense. If a stealth platform is flown there, the setup makes sense. If a rumored aircraft like Aurora, often imagined as a high-speed spy plane, were ever tied to tests in that larger world of black projects, the nightlights might be given a human source. Even if that specific aircraft remains debated, the broader idea is clear. People expect advanced classified craft near Groom Lake because advanced classified craft have been there before. The desert has earned its reputation. But the alien interpretation survives because some sightings seem to exceed even generous ideas of secret aviation. Witnesses describe instant acceleration, right-angle movement, and hovering without the signs of lift. They describe color changes without clear purpose. They describe vertical climbs so fast the object should produce sound, pressure, or shock. The repeated phrase is always the same in spirit. It should have made noise, but it did not. Silence is one of the strongest threads in the Groom Lake light reports. Silence does not prove a thing is alien. Distance, wind, and technology can reduce sound. But silence changes the witness's body. It removes the comfort of cause. A loud object gives the mind something to hold. Engines mean aircraft. Rotors mean helicopters. A boom means speed, but a bright moving object with no sound feels detached from the normal chain of action and effect. The eye sees movement. The ear receives nothing. That absence becomes part of the object. Some observers have described lights appearing after long periods of nothing, almost as if the desert waits until the witness is tired. The night stretches. The cold deepens. The camera rests against a tripod. The stars seem fixed. Then, without warning, a glow lifts from beyond the dark line of the base. For a few seconds, the watcher is fully awake. The body understands before the mind does. There. And then it is gone. This is why the strange lights became part of the living Area 51 legend. They are brief enough to escape proof, but strong enough to become memory. They appear in the one place where secret human testing is expected, which gives skeptics their best explanation. They also behave in certain accounts, like the craft described in the alien technology claims, which gives believers their strongest link. Both readings feed from the same light, human genius, hidden in the desert, or something older, stranger, and not yet admitted. There's no need to choose too quickly. A careful listener can hold both possibilities and still feel the pressure of the question. Area 51 may be a place where the next human aircraft is tested before anyone knows its name. It may also be a place where stories of non-human craft have gathered around real but misunderstood technology. Or it may be, as believers argue, one of the rare places where recovered technology has been moved from storage into the sky. The lights do not answer, they only appear. And perhaps that is enough to keep the legend alive. A secret base can deny. A document can be redacted. A witness can be doubted. A photograph can be blurred. But a light seen by a person in the desert becomes part of that person's inner record. It may never convince anyone else. It may never survive cross-examination. But for the witness, it happened. They stood there. They saw it. They heard nothing. The larger world demands evidence, and rightly so. A glowing sphere over a fence is not enough to prove alien propulsion. A blue light over a runway does not prove element 115. A silent climb does not prove a hidden S4 program. Many lights near Area 51 may one day be explained as drones, aircraft, test, illusions, or stories shaped by expectation. But the unanswered reports remain. They remain because they happen in a sky where secrecy is already the rule. They remain because the base below them has a proven history of hiding aircraft before the public could understand them. They remain because some motions, as described, do not fit the familiar language of flight. And they remain because the government, for so long, offered almost nothing for the public to hold. No full answer, no clear explanation, no easy end to the question. Over Groom Lake, the strange light is never just a light. It is a sign placed against decades of silence. It shines above a dry basin where aircraft have been hidden, where rumors have hardened into culture, where watchers still carry cameras into the dark, and where every unexplained movement becomes part of a much older sentence. Something is happening out there, whether it is human, alien, or some mixture of secrecy and imagination. The desert does not say. It only holds the sky open long enough for someone to see, and then, as so often in this story, the light disappears before the answer arrives. For more than half a century, the government's answer to Area 51 was not a clear explanation. It was quiet, not the kind of quiet that settles a question, but the kind that makes the question grow larger around it. The base was there. Workers went there. Aircraft flew there. Roads led toward it. Security guarded it. Pilots knew to avoid the air above it. People in Nevada could point toward the desert and speak of it as a real place. But officially, for years, the name itself seemed to hover outside normal public language. Area 51, a phrase everyone knew, and few officials wanted to touch. On maps and in documents, other terms appeared. Groom Lake, the test site, the range, the dry, careful language of military land and aviation history. But the public name, the name that carried all the rumors, sat in a strange space between open knowledge and official silence. It was famous without being fully acknowledged. It was visible without being explained. That silence did important work. In the Cold War, secrecy was not only a habit, it was a weapon. The U-2 spy plane and the A-12 ox cart were built for a world in which seeing first could mean surviving. Longer, reconnaissance aircraft had to fly high, fast, and far, gathering information over places where ordinary access was impossible. If foreign intelligence knew too much about the aircraft before they flew, the advantage could be lost. So the silence around Groom Lake had a human reason, a military reason, a reason rooted in fear, strategy, and the race to stay ahead. From that view, Area 51 was not a mystery shrine. It was a tool, a hidden workshop for machines that could not be shown yet. The secrecy protected designs, pilots, engineers, and missions. It kept cameras away, kept Soviet analysts guessing, and allowed aircraft to be tested in the wide Nevada desert before the rest of the world understood what they were looking at. That explanation is strong. It is also incomplete in the public imagination, because the same silence that protected real aircraft also protected every rumor placed beside them. When the government did not answer, other voices filled the space. Witnesses, researchers, former workers, radio hosts, sky watchers, local residents, people who said they saw lights, doors, craft, bodies, materials, and rooms no one was supposed to describe. Some of those stories may have been false. Some may have been mistaken. Some may have been built from classified human programs, misunderstood by the people who glimpsed them. But silence, gave them room. A denied place becomes a larger place in the mind. A redacted page becomes more powerful than a clean denial. A map with an empty patch invites the eye to stay there. The less official language the public receives, the more meaning people begin to place on each missing word. For years, journalists, researchers, and ordinary citizens tried to force the issue through the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA. The idea behind FOIA is simple. Citizens can request records from the government, and the government must release them unless a legal reason allows withholding. In practice, with national security material, the result can be slow, narrow, and heavily blacked out. People asked, the answers came back thin. Pages were withheld, lines were redacted, files were delayed. Some requests confirmed very little. Others seemed to confirm only that there was something too sensitive to confirm. Again, this does not prove alien secrecy. It proves that classified programs were protected, but in the Area 51 story, protection and concealment became hard to separate. Every black mark on a page became a kind of shadow. For official-minded observers, that was simply how national security works. Not every program can be public. Not every aircraft can be described while it is still useful. Not every base must be explained to satisfy curiosity. A secret test site does not owe the world a tour of its hangars, but for believers, the long refusal felt like a pattern too deep to be only about airplanes. They asked a simple question. If there was nothing beyond human aircraft, why did the silence last so long? Why did the name itself remain so carefully avoided? Why did public knowledge and official speech stand so far apart for decades? There may be ordinary answers, but ordinary answers did not stop the growth of the myth. The culture around Area 51 grew in that gap. It moved through documentaries, books, late-night interviews, message boards, roadside stories, and quiet conversations between people who had driven as close as they dared. The base became more than a place where classified work happened. It became a symbol of the government's ability to keep reality divided into two worlds, what some people know and what everyone else is allowed to know. Then, in 2013, something changed. A CIA document release officially acknowledged Area 51 by name in declassified materials. After decades of public rumor and official restraint, the name appeared in the open. The base was no longer only a whispered location, a blurred shape on the edge of maps, or a subject officials avoided with careful language. It was named. Area 51 was real. One mystery was solved. Another remained. The documents confirmed what the grounded history had long suggested. Groom Lake had played a role in secret aircraft testing, especially with the U-2 and A-12 Oxcart programs. The story was Cold War aviation, high-altitude reconnaissance, speed, stealth, cameras, national security. A remote, dry lake bed chosen because it offered isolation, flatness, and control. For many people, that was the answer. Not alien craft, not bodies, not Element 115, not underground vaults filled with recovered technology. Just a hidden test site where the United States built and flew aircraft it did not want its rivals to understand. The 2013 release did not confirm UFOs. It did not confirm alien technology. It did not confirm alien bodies. It did not confirm S4, exotic propulsion, secret biological storage, or recovered craft. That matters. It must be kept clear. The acknowledgement of Area 51 was not a disclosure of extraterrestrial contact. It was an official recognition of the base's role in the history of classified aircraft development. Anyone looking for proof of alien secrets did not find it in those documents, but the release also did something the government may not have intended. It proved that a thing can be widely known and still not officially admitted for a very long time. To believers, that was the deeper lesson. If the government could avoid saying the name Area 51 for decades, even while the public knew the place existed, then what else could remain unspoken? If one layer of secrecy could last until historical documents finally open, why not another layer beneath it? If Cold War aircraft were hidden successfully, why not other programs? This is not proof, but it is the logic of suspicion. The official leaning interpretation saw the 2013 release as a historical correction, a cleanup of old secrecy, a way to place Groom Lake properly into the story of American reconnaissance aircraft. The files explained why a remote desert site became important, why the U-2 had to be tested away from public view, and why the a 12 ox cart needed a place where speed, altitude, and new materials could be pushed beyond known limits. In that reading, the alien legend is a byproduct, a myth grown around real secrecy. The believers' interpretation was different. They saw the release as controlled half-disclosure. The easiest part, admitted. The safe part, released. The old aircraft history, acknowledged because those programs were no longer sensitive in the same way. But the deeper claims, if true, would remain untouched. A government could admit the runway while denying the hangar. It could admit the U-2 while staying silent about anything stranger. Again, no proof, only the question. Mainstream coverage after the release focused mostly on spy planes. That made sense. The documents were about aviation history, not alien bodies or recovered craft. Reporters explained how Area 51 had helped the United States test aircraft at the edge of Cold War need. The tone was often almost amused, as if the great mystery had finally been reduced to a practical military story. But in UFO circles, the reaction was not so simple. For many researchers and believers, the acknowledgement did not end the mystery. It confirmed the behavior pattern they had always pointed to. Deny, avoid, redact, wait, release, only when the most sensitive value has passed. If that pattern applied to spy planes, they asked, why could it not apply to stranger material? Why assume the first admission is the final truth? That is how secrecy keeps working, even after it opens. The release door becomes proof that other doors might still be closed. The government's silence around Area 51 also shaped how people judged later claims. Every whistleblower, every leaked testimony, every strange light, every rumor of hidden storage entered a world already trained to distrust official quiet. When officials said nothing, believers heard concealment. When officials denied alien claims, believers remembered earlier years when the base itself sat in the space between known and acknowledged. This is the cost of long secrecy. Even a truthful denial can begin to sound like another layer of cover. That does not mean every claim is true. It means the trust needed to settle the claim has been damaged. Once a government has hidden one major thing for national security, the public may suspect it can hide another. And when the subject is Area 51, that suspicion does not stay small. It grows through every fence line, every redacted page, every unnamed source, and every official phrase chosen with care. The 2013 acknowledgement answered the easiest question. Is Area 51 real? Yes. Was Groom Lake used for secret aircraft testing? Yes. Were the U-2 and A-12 Oxcart part of that history? Yes, but those answers did not reach the questions that made Area 51 a legend. They did not say whether Bob Lazar's S4 story was true. They did not say whether recovered technology was ever stored in hidden bays. They did not address claims of biological evidence. They did not explain every strange light, every insider account, every rumored underground room, or every report of motion in the restricted sky. The old silence changed shape. It did not fully disappear. This is why the acknowledgement feels almost paradoxical. It brought Area 51 into official history, but it did not remove Area 51 from mystery. In one sense, it made the base more ordinary. A test site, a Cold War facility, a place where human engineers built remarkable aircraft under extreme secrecy. In another sense, it made the legend stronger by confirming that secrecy had been real all along. The public had not imagined the hidden base. They had only been refused its name. For skeptics, that is where the story should settle. Area 51 was secret because spy planes were secret. Strange lights were likely test flights. Rumors grew because people did not know what they were seeing. The alien story filled a vacuum left by military silence, and the documents help explain the vacuum without needing extraterrestrial answers. That is a clean reading, a rational one. But legends do not end only because one layer has been explained, especially not when the deeper claims remain outside the release, especially not when the base still operates, still expands, still sits under restricted sky, still refuses ordinary access, and still carries the cultural memory of everything people believe it may have hidden. Area 51 became famous because of what it would not say. In 2013, it finally said one thing, but one thing was not everything. And perhaps that is the truest statement that can be made about the government's silence. It created a question so large that even an official answer could not fully contain it. The CIA documents gave the public history, but not the whole public piece. They explained the known aircraft programs, but not the emotional weight of the place. They showed why Groom Lake mattered, but not why people still look toward the desert and wonder what remains behind the fences. Because once silence has lasted long enough, it becomes part of the architecture. It stands beside the hangars. It sits over the runways. It hangs in the air above the dry lake bed. And even when a document opens, the silence does not leave all at once. It lingers in the harder question. Not whether Area 51 exists, not whether secret aircraft were tested there. Those questions have answers now. The harder question is what, if anything, was left outside the release. What programs were too new, too strange, too valuable, or too destabilizing to be placed into public history. The acknowledged base remains real. The alien connection remains unproven. The government has named the place, but it has not answered the legend. And so, the mind returns to the same locked doors, the same guarded roads, the same restricted sky, and the same thought that has followed Area 51 for decades. If this much was hidden, what else might be? The final question is the oldest one. Does the United States government possess alien technology? Not rumor, not lights, not testimony alone, not strange shapes seen from far away or stories told after retirement. Real technology, physical objects, machines, materials, bodies, documents, power sources, or parts of a craft that did not begin in any human factory. That question is why Area 51 has never become just another military base in the public mind. It is real enough to stand on, and strange enough to never settle. The official story gives one answer. Area 51, centered around Groom Lake, was a Cold War testing ground for secret aircraft. It helped hide the U-2. It helped hide the A-12 ox cart. It became part of the long race to see farther, fly higher, fly faster, and stay ahead of enemies who were trying to do the same. In that reading, the base is not a vault for alien secrets. It is a monument to human secrecy, human fear, and human invention. That answer explains a great deal. It does not explain everything for everyone, because around that known history, another history has gathered. A shadow history, one built from claims of disc-shaped craft, seamless hulls, strange materials, hidden labs, guarded rooms, biological evidence, silent lights, and people who say they saw too much. These stories do not form proof. They do not create a public case strong enough for science, courts, or history books, but they form something else, a pattern, and patterns are hard to forget. The alleged craft details return in different forms: discs with no normal engines, smooth surfaces that seem less built than formed, light metals that behave in ways witnesses struggle to describe, transparent panels said to turn opaque, controls without buttons, interiors without the usual signs of wiring, switches, or aircraft logic, power sources that seem too small for the work they are said to do. Every one of those claims remains unproven, but together they give the Area 51 legend its shape. Not one object, not one night, not one witness. A whole hidden world imagined from fragments. In that world, security is not just protection from foreign spies. It is protection from a truth too large to release. Access is limited to only a few people. Clearances are divided by zone. Escorts move workers from one place to another. Cameras are forbidden. Questions are discouraged. Teams see only parts of a system they are never allowed to name. The full picture, if it exists, is kept above almost everyone's reach. That is the claim pattern. A secret divided until even the people near it cannot hold it whole. Skeptics hear that and see the weakness. Any missing proof can be explained away by saying the system is too secure. No photographs because cameras are banned. No samples because materials are counted. No documents because records are classified. No named witnesses because people are afraid. No full story because everyone sees only one piece. At some point, the skeptic says, the claim has hidden itself from testing. That is a serious challenge. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and after all these decades, the public has not received it. No confirmed alien craft has been shown. No verified photograph has opened the door. No official document has proven that non-human technology sits inside or beneath Area 51. No physical sample has been brought into open scientific review. No body, no tissue, no machine, no stable alien fuel has been placed where the world can test it. That is the hard limit. The alien connection remains unproven. A careful telling cannot step beyond that line, but believers answer from the other side of the fence. They argue that Area 51 was built to make proof nearly impossible to remove. A person cannot simply walk out with a sample. A worker cannot carry a camera into the most secure room. A guard cannot take a document from a system designed to track every page. If the secret is real, they say, then the lack of public evidence may not mean the secret is false. It may mean the security worked. That answer does not prove the claim, but it explains why the claim survives. Area 51 sits at the crossing point between secrecy and imagination. Its real history makes extraordinary stories feel less impossible than they might feel elsewhere. A base with no proven secrecy would not carry the same power, but Groom Lake did keep secrets. It did hide aircraft. It did grow while the public wondered. It was not officially acknowledged by name until 2013, when declassified CIA material confirmed the base's role in U-2 and A-12 testing. That official acknowledgement solved one question. It did not erase the rest. The 2013 release framed Area 51 as a Cold War test facility. That is important. It gave the public a grounded history, but it did not address the deeper claims that had collected around the base over decades. It did not speak to alien craft. It did not speak to biological evidence. It did not speak to Bob Lazar's S4 story. It did not speak to stable element 115 hidden propulsion systems, or underground vaults. For skeptics, that silence is expected because those claims are not true. For believers, it is expected because those claims are still too sensitive. And so, the same fact is read two ways. That is the strange life of Area 51. Even the answers become part of the mystery. Some theories now suggest that if alien materials were ever held at Area 51, they may no longer be there. The base became too famous. The roads were watched. The ridges were studied. Satellite images became easy to find. Tourist researchers and sky watchers turned the surrounding desert into a kind of open-air waiting room. If the government had anything truly beyond public knowledge, believers ask, why leave it at the most famous secret base on Earth? Maybe, they say, it was moved to another range, another contractor, another underground site, another facility with no name, no tourist highway, no souvenir shops, and no army of watchers carrying long lenses into the dark. This theory lets Area 51 become a decoy, a place whose fame protects deeper silence somewhere else. It suggests that the real secret moved when the legend grew too large around it. The base remains active, but the most sensitive material has gone elsewhere. That is one possibility within the myth. The opposite theory is just as powerful. Maybe Area 51's fame is the cover. Maybe people look at the base so often, joke about it so much, and surround it with so many extreme stories that the truth becomes impossible to discuss seriously. A secret can sometimes hide best in the place everyone thinks they already understand. The base can keep expanding. New hangars can appear. Our runways can be lengthened. Infrastructure can grow. And the public, already trained to laugh at the wildest claims, may miss the quieter ones. In that version, Area 51 hides in plain sight, not because no one looks, because everyone looks through the wrong story. Satellite imagery has shown continuing expansion over time. New hangars, longer runways, and additional infrastructure in the wider base area. That does not prove anything alien. A modern test facility expands for human reasons all the time. New aircraft need new support. New missions need new buildings. New security needs new systems. A base that remains useful will keep changing. Still, every new structure becomes another question. A long roof, a fresh road, a larger apron, a new bay, a darker shadow beside a hill. The public sees shapes from above and asks what they were built to hold. That question may be unfair. It may also be unavoidable, because Area 51 has taught people that buildings can appear long before their purpose is named. The biological claims remain the most severe part of the legend. They say not only that technology was hidden, but that bodies from crash sites were stored in sealed environments, studied under medical control, and kept from public knowledge. No confirmed evidence supports this in the open. No public record proves it. Yet the claim remains because it touches the deepest meaning of the entire subject. If bodies were found, then the question of alien life would no longer be about distant stars. It would be about custody. Who had them? Who studied them? Who decided the world was not ready? Who signed the order that kept the greatest discovery in human history behind locked doors? Those are heavy questions. They should not be answered lightly, and perhaps that is why the Area 51 story never fully becomes entertainment, no matter how many jokes surround it. Beneath the memes, the road signs, the alien souvenirs, and the late-night stories, there is a serious fear. The fear that reality itself may have been divided, that a small group may know something about life, technology, and our place in the universe that the rest of humanity has been denied. If true, the reason for hiding it would have to be immense. National security is the obvious answer. A craft that could move beyond known limits would be the most valuable military technology on Earth. Whoever understood it first would hold an advantage no nation would willingly give away. If a power source beyond known engineering existed, it could reshape war, surveillance, transport, and defense. It could also become dangerous in the hands of rivals. Military advantage alone could explain secrecy, but other reasons are often suggested. Economic disruption, energy industry, collapse, public panic, religious shock, social instability. The fear that human institutions could not absorb the knowledge cleanly. The fear that the truth would raise more questions than governments could answer. Who are they? Where are they from? Why are they here? How long have they been here? What do they want? What have they already done? Each question leads to another. None of them are small. Skeptics would say this is how mythology grows. A lack of proof becomes a grand theory of suppression. A secret aircraft base becomes a cosmic archive. Human fear builds a bigger story than the facts can support. They may be right. People do fill silence with meaning. We do turn locked doors into symbols. We do imagine hidden worlds behind places we cannot enter. But believers would say that mythology often grows around something real. A fire behind the smoke, a buried fact beneath the story. That is where Area 51 remains, suspended between the two. It is not an ordinary myth, because the place is real. It is not a proven alien site because the evidence is not public. It is not just a joke because too many serious questions cling to it. It is not a solved mystery because every answer leaves another door closed. Area 51 is real. Its alien connection remains unproven, and the questions remain behind the gates, unanswered. That may be the most honest ending. Not a declaration, not a reveal, not a promise that the truth is about to break open. Just the recognition that some mysteries last because they sit on the border between fact and fear. Groom Lake is a real dry lake bed in Nevada. The restricted airspace is real. The history of secret aircraft is real. The government silence was real. The 2013 acknowledgement was real. The alien secrets are not proven, but they are not fully erased from public imagination. They remain in the sealed hangar doors, in the watched ridgelines, in the stories of workers who saw only one piece, in the lights that rose too quickly and left no sound, in the old name S4, in the debate over element 115, in the thought of hidden rooms beneath the desert where no ordinary person will ever stand. Maybe the truth is only human. Maybe that is enough. Human secrecy can be deep. Human machines can be strange. Human governments can hide astonishing things for a very long time. The base may be a temple not to alien contact, but to the power of classification itself. A reminder that the public often learns the truth years after the truth has already shaped the world. Or maybe the deeper question has not been answered because the answer is still locked away. Maybe the dry lake bed has seen machines that never appeared in any public program. Maybe a door opened at night and something smooth, silent, and impossible moved under the stars. Maybe a material sample sits in a container under a code name no one outside the program would recognize. Maybe the greatest secret is not that Area 51 existed, but that we still do not know what kind of history passed through it. The desert gives no reply. It simply keeps its shape. The pale basin, the roads, the fences, the mountains, the closed sky, the buildings seen from far above, the watchers kept at a distance, the silence that has become part of the place itself. And somewhere inside that silence is the reason Area 51 endures, not because it has proven everything, because it has answered so little. Thank you for coming with us beyond the fences of Area 51. We did not bring back proof from the desert. No open door, no hidden craft under bright lights, no document that finally says what so many people have waited to hear. The deepest claims remain where they have always been, caught between testimony, secrecy, doubt, and the long quiet of a place built to keep people away. But some questions do not lose their power simply because they remain unanswered. What moves behind the sealed hangars when the desert is dark? What rises above Groom Lake when no one is meant to be watching? What kind of truth would need so many fences, so much silence, and so many years of careful distance? Maybe the answer is human. Maybe the whole mystery is a story about classified aircraft, national security, and the strange shapes that secrecy gives to ordinary fear. Or maybe there is still something there we have not been allowed to name. As you leave the story tonight, keep the question gently, not as certainty, not as fear, just as a quiet thought from the edge of the Nevada desert, where the dry lake bed still waits, the sky is still closed, and the gates remain exactly where they were. Rest easy, and until next time, keep looking toward the quiet places